A powerful beast once asked a brave warrior a question. A pack of wolves surrounded Ananta in his transformed state. Their yellow eyes and sharp fangs glowed in the dark of the forest, their claws digging deep into the ground. They left long gashes, just waiting for the Alpha's command to leap in and devour their prey. They had once asked Ananta, "Your teeth are not sharp, nor are your claws strong." Surrounded by the wolves, Ananta, in his black dragon form, stood tall and massive. They had asked him, "So what is your weapon?" As the alpha wolf howled the signal, the pack lunged. Ananta grabbed one wolf with his right hand and used his razor-sharp claws on his left to shred the others. He replied, "Blood and sweat." He then used his massive feet to crush a wolf, adding, "and bone and flesh." The alpha wolf, seeing its pack slaughtered, grew furious. It lunged at him like a madman. Ananta grabbed its jaws and held them with sheer strength, saying, "I swallow the bodies of my enemies one by one," before leaning down to bite its throat and drain its blood. They were like vampires, and from that moment, they became his weapons. Tearing the wolf's jaws apart, Ananta growled, "I will finish you and devour you." Monsters with magical power are mystical creatures. A rare few are blessed by God with human forms, incarnations, sent to deliver prophecies and help humanity. But that same power creates evil incarnations known to humans as the Demon King. A figure was breathing heavily, sprinting through the woods, praying for someone to help him, because he was being hunted. But no miracle happened. He was struck by an arrow. The culprits were just joking around, hitting their target. They were a band of bandits. They killed everyone who passed by to loot their goods. After the robbery, they headed back, whispering about rumors of a beast following them. The leader suddenly discovered the carcasses of wolves scattered across the ground. One man thought it was a territorial dispute, but Ma'an insisted it looked more like a massacre. Suddenly, a man shouted he found the body of a mystical creature. It was Ananta, leaning against the alpha wolf. The bandits surrounded him, and one reached out toward him, only to be bitten painfully by Ruby. The man flew into a rage, intent on killing the lizard, but Ananta had already awakened. He punched the man in the face, threatening to kill anyone who touched his pet. Just like that, the man met his end. Ananta glared at the rest of them. "I forbid you from touching it, or don't blame me for what happens." The bandits screamed, claiming he had started the fight, and some accused him of killing their comrade. They surrounded Ananta, demanding his life. But they didn't know that messing with a beast meant their time was up. Ananta took a stance, waiting for them to attack. He moved like a blur, darting back and forth, slicing off the limbs of the bandits. They screamed in pain, but stubbornly kept surrounding him. The leader trembled in fear. Unable to take it anymore, one bandit raised his crossbow, and the others followed suit, aiming at Ananta. He turned his back and noticed it. The leader screamed, "Fire!" Long, sharp bolts flew toward Ananta. He didn't fear them. He used his hand to shield Ruby and activated his power. The bandits grew frantic. Seeing this sight, Ananta's back suddenly turned pitch black with red streaks spreading across it like a volcanic eruption. Then the spirits of the monsters he had killed appeared, merging into one as he surveyed everything. The bandits screamed in terror, "The Demon King!" Suddenly, Ananta's blood-red eyes shifted back to his normal yellow, and he pulled back all the power he had just unleashed. He braced himself on the ground, breathing heavily. The immense exertion had drained his energy. The bandits tied him up and dragged him to their camp. The leader looked at the giant alpha wolf, in shock, asking his underlings if Ananta had really done that. Ananta advised them, "You'd better burn it and send it off. That would be for the best." But Ma'an shouted angrily. The leader stopped him and approached, asking the stranger, "What is your name?" He replied, "Ananta." When asked his motive, he simply said he was hungry. Hearing this, the leader looked skeptical. Ma'an, standing nearby, added fuel to the fire, mentioning he had witnessed Ananta transform and spoke of recent rumors. "Everyone says there's a demon king around here devouring corpses." The leader thought he was human, but Ma'an insisted he was the demon king in disguise. Ananta refuted his words. Suddenly, a crow flew over, dripping blood onto the leader's head. The alpha wolf, thought to be dead, came back to life. Ananta said, "That creature may no longer exist, but it is a minion of the demon king." The camp was attacked by wolves. A figure wearing a deer skull commanded the pack to raid the camp. Wolves leaped over the fence, biting the bandits. A fire erupted, burning the wolves. A figure jumped out from the flames. It was Ananta. Driven by hunger, he roared, gathering them into one spot before erupting into his black dragon form, surrounded by blood and sweat. With blazing red eyes, bone, and flesh, Ananta approached the deer skull figure. "I will swallow you whole." He lunged at the target, shouting, "I will crush you." Ananta challenged him. "Show me you're more than just a gasping piece of prey." The deer skull figure stomped his foot in anger and screamed. From deep in the forest, the spirits of monsters surged forth. They lunged at Ananta, but he grabbed them by the throat, slamming them into the ground. Then Ananta stomped hard and performed a flip, kicking the entire swarm of monsters away. He launched an attack at the deer skull figure, who used a phantom projection. The figure shrieked and activated his power, and both Ananta and the deer skull lunged at each other. Boom! A massive explosion echoed. The two sides clashed violently. Ananta bared his sharp fangs, and the deer skull stabbed at his back. Suddenly, Ananta caught the figure's hand, surprising the deer skull. Ananta unleashed a powerful punch, landing a headshot that sent the figure flying. Ananta used his claws to grab the figure's arm and swung him down with a painful slam. The deer skull was covered in blood. Lying gasping on the ground, the figure watched as Ananta slowly approached. Ananta choked the figure, and the silhouette of a girl appeared beneath the deer skull. He was incredibly shocked. He recognized this person. "You weren't even conscious anymore, were you?" A noise sounded from behind. Ananta turned back to look as the figure flew past, slashing his shoulder. A giant crow appeared in the sky and landed on the ground near him. Ananta realized that the bird was in fact the true corpse-eating demon king. The bird transformed back into a man, and he looked incredulous, muttering, "That's impossible. My precious shadow puppet has never been defeated by anyone," the demon king hissed. "I've had my eyes on you ever since you set foot in this place." He chided Ananta, asking why he wouldn't just... Before he could finish, Ananta shoved the deer-skulled girl toward him. "You know," Ananta remarked, "your mumbling almost put me to sleep." "I'm not interested in your little monologue, you monster," Ananta challenged. "Come on, let's see what you've got." Enraged, the demon king summoned his power. "By my power I command the souls of the dead," he cried out, shifting back into his crow form. He eyed Ananta with interest. "If I can kill you and control you, I'll have a puppet even bigger and stronger than those deer and all the others." He unleashed his shadow manifestation technique, causing the corpses of monsters and bandits to rise, moving under his control to fight. They surrounded Ananta. The crow shrieked, "You unknown wretch! Let my army of blood-drenched corpses tear you apart and devour you." A wolf lunged, snapping at Ananta's leg, while the bandit minions impaled him with spears. The crow crowed with delight. "Have you finally run out of strength to fight back?" Then the crow slashed his wings fiercely toward Ananta. A truly savage scene unfolded as the demon king gloated, "Come on, let me hear your cries of despair before you die." Ananta said nothing, then suddenly let out a maniacal laugh. "Ha ha ha!" He activated his power, creating a blinding crimson zone. The crow gasped in shock. "What is that?" As the imagery zoomed into his eyes, the silhouette of a monster emerged. "What is this?" Ananta let the monster souls manifest, bearing their fangs and claws. He grinned and said, "Let me hear the roar of the beasts." And then he opened his mouth wide as if to devour the creature whole. He clamped his jaws around the crow's head. Perhaps sensing the foul stench from Ananta's breath, the crow coughed up blood, ack. The monster souls within Ananta rushed out to greet their fellow spirits, and the crow, terrified to the point of bleeding from his eyes, dissolved into them. The deer-skulled girl opened her eyes to see Ananta absorbing the power, and she sat there completely stunned. Ananta, sensing someone watching, turned around. His eyes were a deep blood red. Seeing this, the girl gulped down her fear. Ananta stepped toward her, and she was surprised when he announced, "You are no longer under the Demon King's control." The girl raised her hands to her head, remembering, "I had glowing wings back then." Ananta asked suspiciously, "Could it be that you were also a victim of those wings?" The girl, confused, asked, "Victim of the wings, who are you?" He replied, "Ananta, descendant of the Black Dragon. I am the survivor who eradicates all demon kings in this world, and I will be the one to kill the avatar of the wings." The sun began to peek over the horizon. Under the flickering sunlight, the gruesome scene of corpses piled upon one another was laid bare. Amidst the desolation, Ananta stood before the girl and introduced himself. "Ananta, descendant of the Black Dragon, the one who purges all demon kings in this world, and the one who will kill the avatar of the wings." Hearing Ananta's dramatic profile, Nadia was sweating buckets in fear. "I honestly have no idea what you're talking about," she said, bewildered. Black Dragon Avatar of the Wings? I don't get it. Her eyes suddenly contracted. Before the two could finish, Nadia collapsed. Ananta looked down at her coldly. I'm sure you've caused quite a bit of trouble yourself, haven't you? He grew stern. In her dream, Nadia was running for her life, panting heavily. The deer skull suddenly appeared before her, and Nadia turned back. Seeing the deer skull chasing her, she bolted at full speed. Suddenly she tripped and fell face first into the dirt. When she lifted her head, she was covered in fresh blood. The silhouette of the deer skull reflected on a pool of blood. Nadia looked around terrified and saw corpses strewn all around the lake. She let out a few frightened gasps. Suddenly, the avatars of the wings appeared, lighting up the dark sky. Nadia turned to look as the figure smiled radiantly. The dream ended there. Nadia woke up. Whitefoot noticed and asked, "Oh, you're awake?" The girl stretched and asked, "You were frowning so hard in your sleep." "Had a nightmare," Nadia thought, the one who transformed. Suddenly a call of Ruby rang out. Ananta commanded it, "Start." Ruby gathered fire in its throat and spewed it out like watering a plant. The fan-shaped flame burned those controlled by the Demon King. From the fire, shadows emerged, flew up, and turned to ash. Ananta stood by, watching the scene coldly. Whitefoot explained to Nadia, "That's how you have to handle monsters controlled by the Demon King." The little dog girl rushed over to compliment him. "You're pretty good at this, huh?" An enraged Ananta grabbed her by the scruff, making her yelp. "Shut up, you useless errand girl!" Whitefoot giggled sheepishly. Ananta pointed at Nadia. "Because of your nonsense gossip, this whole mess happened again." He tossed Whitefoot aside. "I'm done here. Give me my pay." Whitefoot let out a sharp cry of pain, rubbing her back as she muttered, "You're still as cranky as ever, aren't you?" She then turned to the girl and asked, "Pardon me, what's your name?" Nadia stared blankly for a moment before introducing herself. "The name's Nadia," Whitefoot teased. "Oh my, I never expected to run into another victim of Ananta's wings." Nadia asked in surprise, "What?" Ananta angrily cut their conversation short, shouting, "Hey!" Only then did Whitefoot remember the task at hand, but she still teased Ananta first. "So impatient, aren't you?" With that, she pulled out something that looked like a pocket watch with intricate carvings on the front. It had a rabbit design on it. She clicked a switch, the lid popped open, and inside it revealed something resembling a map of the constellations. A massive hole opened up right where they were standing, while Ananta and Whitefoot calmly jumped down into it. Nadia screamed at the top of her lungs, bracing herself and squeezing her eyes shut, terrified of landing on her backside. But nothing happened, so she opened her eyes in astonishment. Before her stood a city with a massive tree at its center. She gasped and asked, "Where on earth is this?" Whitefoot replied with a grin. "As the saying goes, a clever rabbit has 3 burrows. My apologies for the slow introduction." She then introduced herself. "I'm a member of the Thokkwok, the largest information network across the 6 lands. Your friendly, fair-skinned informant at your service." She gestured toward Ananta. "And this is Ananta. We've known each other for quite a long time, I suppose." She explained that this was the largest trading city in the south, and the giant tree before them was known as Senris, the sacred white lotus. At the top of the tree, Nadia's face darkened, and she interrupted. "That's enough. I'm grateful you saved me from the Demon King's control, but I don't want to hear any more of your monologues. If you want to keep talking, answer my question first. What is your goal in bringing me to this mysterious city?" Ananta told her to just be quiet and follow, promising she would get her answer. As they entered the market, Nadia asked him about the incarnation of the wings. He called it a disgusting monster. She still didn't quite understand, so Whitefoot explained, "An incarnation is granted a human form, and the incarnation of the wings is bestowed, with the power to grant others an incomplete form of strength." They had arrived at their destination, the cafe's slave market. Inside it was packed with foreigners, wanderers, and mystical creatures, all captured as slaves. Nadia was confused as to what this place had to do with the incarnation of the wings. Ananta kicked her down into the cellar, which was filled with people destined to be sacrificed to the incarnation of the wings. Ananta wanted to use her as bait. After locking Nadia away, he told Whitefoot, "The rest is up to you." Whitefoot agreed. Suddenly, Nadia called out to them. She asked if all the people locked up with her were captured by them. She screamed at Ananta, "Using weak, innocent people to achieve your own goals, don't you feel any pangs of conscience at all?" Hearing that, Ananta challenged her, "If you don't like it, take your revenge. Just don't get your hands dirty." Nadia was furious. Whitefoot sympathized, "Those poor souls. What kind of agony will they have to endure because of the incarnation of the wings? Whitefoot teased Nadia, who scolded her in return. Whitefoot then exposed the truth. That's why you were controlled by the Demon King and ended up killing so many people, right? You didn't really care about those tiny lives either, did you? Not doing it on purpose doesn't mean nothing happened. She said to Nadia, "Our common enemy is the evil incarnation of the wings." Deep in the corridors of the arena, Ananta sat lost in thought. Whitefoot approached him, saying, "You said some unnecessary things back there." "Skipped. We didn't actually do anything to those sacrificial victims, did we?" Ananta asked with concern. "How is she doing?" Whitefoot replied, "I asked Nadia if she wanted to cooperate." She explained that just as planned, they had been taken to the White Lotus Temple by the Guardians of the Wings. By now, Nadia had been led to the temple. Whitefoot recounted that offering a sacrifice was the first step to meeting the incarnation of the wings. This way, all their hard work in hunting him down wouldn't be in vain. She added that the area was protected by a barrier, so even the people of the White Lotus Temple couldn't break in. You needed a living sacrifice to enter. That problem is solved now, too. She continued, "If you can lay a hand on a branch of the White Lotus, the symbol of the victor, you will soon meet the incarnation of the wings." But Whitefoot knew the process wouldn't be that easy. She thought to herself that if Ananta were willing to turn into a monster one slaughter, would be enough to grab the enemy's attention. She narrowed her eyes. Even so, there was a limit that must never be crossed because she knew Ananta hadn't mastered his powers when transformed into a beast. She mused to herself about Ananta. As a monster, are you trying to draw a line between your human side and your beastly side? She knew there were many ways to do it. How contradictory. Ananta caught Whitefoot not paying attention. He swung his blade and said, "I've had a full meal, so I'll exercise a bit to help with digestion." He told Whitefoot to sit quietly and watch. Ananta, holding two blades, declared, "This is how I hunt monsters." Seeing this, Whitefoot said sheepishly, "Don't do anything that causes too much of a stir, okay? You know what will happen if you do," Ananta said coolly. "I'll keep that in mind." In the arena, Bernhardt was commanding his troops against the monsters. He shouted, "Shield formation!" The unit brought out two shields and lined up side by side. Preparing to confront the monsters, a giant leopard was surrounded by the formation. The panther is surrounded by a pile of fallen soldiers. Bernhardt roars to reassure his troops, telling them not to be afraid and to hold the line when suddenly a hand appears. It lands on a soldier's shoulder. Ananta violently shoves the soldier to the ground. The other soldiers, furious, shout, "What do you think you're doing?" Ananta yells back in anger, "Move, you idiots!" The panther snarls and lashes out, swiping its massive paw toward him. Ananta doesn't flinch, landing a brutal blow straight to its head. Bernhardt stares completely stunned by what he just witnessed. Meanwhile, Whitefoot rests his chin on his hand and remarks, "This is going to be trouble." In that moment, Ananta slices off the panther's right leg. Bernhardt cannot believe his eyes. How could this be happening? A normal human outclassing a mythical beast. Ananta takes a stance, leaps in front of the creature, and knocks it out cold with the two blades in his hands. The spectators in the stands are shocked. After killing the panther, Ananta screams in rage, turning toward the White Lotus tree and shouting, "Just you wait! I'm going to tear you apart and swallow you whole soon enough." At the same time, at the White Lotus Temple, the tree is glowing. The temple gates open and quickly shut. Nadia, among the group of sacrifices, is deeply anxious as a man steps out into the center of the hall. He speaks, "My fearful children," urging everyone not to be afraid, then raises his hand in greeting. "Welcome to the Temple of the Gods." Nadia wonders to herself, is he the incarnation of the wings? For context, the White Lotus tree is surrounded by a powerful barrier and is also known as the Holy Tree, though its true purpose remains unknown. The incarnation of the wings has nested there and begun to accept human sacrifices. Those who offer a sacrifice are granted the privilege to fight in the cafe arena. Warriors who survive the battle against the spirit beasts and demonstrate their true ability will be gifted a branch of the White Lotus tree. Those who prove useful to the incarnation of the wings will receive peerless power and become the protectors of the wings. Back in prison, Whitefoot had discussed with Nadia that to bypass their defenses, he would have her disguised as a sacrifice to infiltrate the temple. Nadia asks Whitefoot, "Why does Ananta want to kill the incarnation of the wings? Is it related to his own power?" Whitefoot doesn't answer her directly, saying only that if a panther incarnation truly exists, There is no one more fitting to kill it than him. Whitefoot recalls a vision of Ananta, clutching a charred corpse to his chest, weeping blood. Back in the present at the temple, the man standing in the center speaks, "O you people who have overcome countless hardships, look up at me." The people in the sacrificial group gaze at him. Some even begin to pray to the man. He introduces himself as the holy god they worship, the master of the white lotus tree, and the incarnation of the wings, bringing a sweet mist to this dark world. He says his name is Banjak. Banjak speaks in a low, grim tone. "I shall show mercy to you sacrifices. Prepare for the coming liberation and offer your bodies to the wings that save these living souls." A little girl suddenly kneels, saying, "O incarnation of the wings, please have mercy on us. My sister and I are innocent. Please spare her." The girl pleads, "Please, you can take me instead. Just spare my sister." Hearing this, Banjak smiles and raises a hand. "My beautiful children, it is good to be selfless. I shall reward you." Hearing Banjak say this, the girl is overjoyed. Boom! The girl's head explodes. She didn't even finish saying thank you before she died. Her younger sister stands beside her, terrified. The others in the sacrificial group see this and tremble uncontrollably. Banjak sits on his throne, arrogantly declaring, "Before the line of death, all living beings are equal." He points his foot toward the younger sister of the girl. "You have just been liberated from fear and regret. You will see each other again in nirvana soon." Hearing him preach so grandly, the group of sacrifices becomes even more terrified. The henchman draws his sword, intending to kill, but the sky suddenly turns black. It's Nadia. She has activated her power. Banjak remains smug, saying, "There is no savior here." Nadia growls at him, "You are nothing but a heartless murderer." Banjak rests his chin on his hand, indifferent. I wonder which sacrifice will be lucky enough to become an incarnation next. At this moment, Nadia is still radiating her power when suddenly she hears the people around her calling her a monster. Looking at her own shadow self, Nadia falters. She remembers Whitefoot's words, "Whether intentional or accidental, once things happen, there is no turning back." She recalls the scene where she was controlled by the Demon King and killed so many people. A voice of encouragement rings out, "Don't give up." Nadia seems to snap out of the nightmare. She looks at the child who said those words and smiles. With that, she unleashes her power. Vines burst from the ground surrounding the group of sacrifices, while other vines lash out tightly, binding the henchmen. Hanging them in mid-air, the remaining vines form a protective barrier around the sacrifices. Nadia reassures everyone, "Don't worry, I'm here now." While Nadia is distracted, Banjak attacks her. He taunts her, "Little doe, stop making empty promises." He insults her, "A nameless incarnation like you dares to stand against me." From beneath the dust, Nadia's silhouette appears. She declares, "I have a name. My name is Nadia, the incarnation of nature." As she speaks, deer antlers grow from her head. Banjak laughs mockingly. "Haha, what an insolent woman." Nadia uses her technique again, the branches growing rapidly. She wonders, is this a form of invisible waves or remote control? She realizes that although she had accidentally blocked all his attacks, they didn't seem fazed at all. So she decides to use her move Susan Loss, where the branches interlock, forming a mushroom-like shape. Nadia thinks, with this much power, I will crush him. But when he sees her using a major move, Banjak smiles again, then takes flight and commands, "Shatter into pieces." At the arena, Ananta looks toward the temple and realizes something is wrong. The audience in the stands is in an uproar. Back at the temple, Nadia's technique is destroyed by Banjak in a single blow. Banjak looks at her with utter contempt. He summons his loyal servant to fight Nadia, a dragon with human skulls covering its head. The dragon stabs a sharp, bony horn into its own chest. While Nadia was distracted, the crowd in the arena stands was roaring with excitement over the bloody spectacle below where Ananta stood gripping his blade. The white tiger was covered in slashes and blood, snarling and gasping for breath. Ananta narrowed his eyes, ordered the beast to go wild, and swung his sword up. "Death is here, don't you dare turn away." Thwack! With one strike, the blade severed the tiger's head, killing it instantly. Bonhart watched the scene without a word while his subordinate spoke up, "Lord Bonhart." The sudden turn of events left everyone in shock. He looked at his companions who had slumped to the ground, realizing the other guy had victory in the bag. "According to the plan, you were supposed to be the winner, weren't you?" Ananta, covered in blood and breathing heavily, heard the announcer declare, "Ladies and gentlemen of Cafe, the winner has been revealed." The subordinate panicked. "Sir, what do we do now?" The announcer continued, "Citizens, the prize for our glorious champion is a branch of the White Lotus tree delivered personally by the Guardians." A group of masked figures led by a leader walked out. Carrying a box, the leader urged the subordinate to stay calm. "Don't lose your cool. The plan stands as discussed. No matter what happens, that White Lotus branch will be ours." The group approached Ananta. He put on a stern face, opened the box, and took the branch, staring at it as if he wanted to devour it whole. At all costs, he had to kill the incarnation of the wings. Inside the shrine, vines had overgrown the protective barrier as two children peeked out to observe Nadia's situation. Ambushed by a dragon made of skulls, a weakened Nadia pulled out a sharp horn, knelt on the ground, and panted heavily. The monster loomed right over her. Bonsgath mocked her. "Nadia, you said you'd do everything in your power to protect those sacrifices, didn't you?" "What a lie," he sneered. "Just look at those pathetic faces. Go on, save them from their fear." "That would be true mercy," Nadia spat back. "Don't make me repeat myself." "You are no savior," she shouted in fury. "You're just a horrific demon spreading death and fear among the people." Hearing this, Bonsgath's face darkened. "If you'll excuse me." True repentance begins with despair. He used his magic, causing vines to erupt from the ground beneath the barrier, piercing the sacrifices trapped inside. Nadia watched in horror as the massacre unfolded. Everyone inside was dead. Helpless, she screamed, "No, stop!" as the vines reached toward the monster. They plunged into its flesh. Bonsgath radiated a brilliant glow, smiling villainously. "Receive the blessing of these repentant wings. Moving from here to my side. That is your honor." The vines drained the energy from the sacrifices. Nadia stood there stunned, wondering what was inside that White Lotus branch. Bonsgath laughed. "It's simple. This is hell where both life and death coexist." He raised his hand. "Unlike the immortal Nawa, humans are destined to lose their lives. Only I can grant salvation to your meaningless lives." The monster's power surged through the vines to the sacrifices. "Just watch," he said. "Your very lives are nourishing the White Lotus tree. They will create immortal warriors, a cycle of reincarnation, reborn as the light protecting the White Lotus tree." The monster roared, "It's here!" "A blessing of wings," Nadia challenged. "What kind of monster are you? How many people have to die?" Bonsgath flicked his finger, and a vine shot up from the ground, wrapping around Nadia. He answered her, so many that counting them would be pointless. He sneered, "What a stubborn woman." He asked if she had any last words. Nadia told him to go to hell. Bonsgath chuckled, but suddenly something black flew rapidly toward him. He turned and slashed, slicing off half the head of a sacrifice that had been drained by the White Lotus. The last of its life force faded away. Right then, Ananta leaped toward Bonsgath. The monster's pupils reflected Ananta, who drove the White Lotus branch he'd just won straight into Bonsgath's eye. After the strike, Ananta landed with an incredibly cool pose. Nadia saw him and cheered happily. "Ananta!" He turned to tease her. "Still alive? Pretty lucky, aren't you?" Bonsgath realized the thing in his eye was the White Lotus branch. He turned to Ananta. "You're the winner of the arena." He couldn't believe it. "No way, you actually won. I never imagined anyone would break into this place." Ananta turned to Nadia. "Hey, where's the incarnation of the wings? Why are you caught up with this lunatic?" Nadia was surprised. "What are you talking about?" Ananta spoke up. "Without his permission, this wouldn't be enough to enter EL's territory." Hearing him mention El, Bonsgath flew into a rage. "How dare you! How dare you insult El, the great incarnation of the wings?" He transformed in anger. "I will tear that disrespectful mouth of yours to shreds." Ananta whispered something to him. He exposed the truth. "Hey, you know damn well he isn't the incarnation of the wings, don't you?" The Guardian suddenly swung his sword, attacking Bonhart directly, but he dodged the blade. Instantly, he launched a counterattack. Slash! With one swift motion, Bonhart's spear cut through the Guardian's body, killing him on the spot. Having successfully taken the Guardian's life, Bernhardt slightly lifted his face. Clutching his spear, his expression radiating absolute authority, he barked orders at his underlings. "Wipe out everyone present immediately." Receiving the command, the minions went into a frenzy, launching wild, ceaseless attacks against the stunned Guardians. Watching the chaotic scene unfold, Bernhardt felt deeply suspicious. He was waiting for the results to be announced so he could bring the winner into the fold. But as no one appeared holding a white lotus branch, he even started to harbor a shred of doubt, suspecting this might be a trap set to ensnare him. Bernhardt walked slowly into the room. Upon seeing the full scene inside, he was horrified, thinking, someone else is also targeting the embodiment of the wings just like me. Returning to Ananta in the present, he and Nadia were tied up, standing silently facing Banjak. Looking at the lunatic constantly shifting his body in front of her, Nadia worriedly spoke up. If he's not the embodiment of the wings, could he be an imposter? After hearing the incredibly naive question from Nadia, Ananta, who had been standing silently beside her, became extremely annoyed and snapped back without holding back. He told her that her eyes were just for decoration, because to him the true embodiment of the wings was an incredibly prestigious title. The original form of that being was 6 white wings. With that, Ananta cast a glance at Banjak as if by accident, mockingly saying that he was supposed to be the embodiment of the wings, yet he didn't even have a single proper pair of wings. Furthermore, he ridiculed Banjak, saying he should take better care of his appearance before even thinking about impersonating others. With that, Ananta showed utter contempt. He scoffed at Banjak for only being good at running his mouth. Having heard Ananta, Banjak was left speechless, perhaps to save a shred of face. He could only put on a dark, furious expression, declaring that Ananta's nonsense wasn't worth a reply, and then ordered his minions to kill Ananta. Just at that moment, Ananta quickly unleashed his power and rage. As he punched the ground, the vines wrapped around Nadia's body immediately let her go. After struggling free from the plastic-like vines, Nadia looked to the side and noticed 2 others were still tightly bound. Without a second thought, she rushed to save them. Returning to Ananta, he was relentlessly raining down fatal blows on Banjak's minions. While he was fighting fiercely, a monster with a skull-like head appeared and launched a direct attack. Sensing the situation becoming critical, Ananta immediately fully transformed into a fearsome fire salamander clinging to the white pillar. Shortly after, he lunged straight at the giant monster at the speed of light, striking its body with a brutal, relentless punch. Without resting for even a second, Ananta took a stance again, darting forward like an arrow toward the beast, unleashing his power and delivering a critical strike straight into the monster, successfully tearing its body apart. However, just as Ananta finished off the monster, Banjak unexpectedly transformed and launched a direct attack from behind. Caught off guard, Ananta was immediately pinned to the ground by those sharp claws. Banjak looked down at him with a condescending gaze, saying he had allowed him to witness the full extent of divine power. Saying this, Banjak raised his claws, intending to end Ananta's life. But under the eyes of everyone present, Ananta managed to block his power in time. Both began to clash continuously, attacking each other with fatal blows. Ananta even had an arm severed by Banjak's claws. Just when it seemed Ananta was defeated, he instantly focused all his power to finish Banjak off with one strike. Banjak was no slouch. He immediately deployed vines to activate a defensive mode, but his power simply couldn't compare to Ananta's. His mess of vines was quickly cut through by Ananta, and that terrifying blow also pierced right through Banjak's body. At that very moment, another monster suddenly appeared behind Ananta, attacking him directly and declaring he would teach him a lesson, showing him the true wrath of the gods. Just then, in the clear blue sky, countless cracks suddenly appeared, and after a part of the sky shattered into pieces, a massive hand emerged. Standing inside a purple halo with a dignified air, Biharan gazed down at the landscape on the ground. In his heart, he seemed to be silently calculating something. Returning to Ananta's battle after landing a brutal punch on him, the cruel monster began to boast proudly, telling everyone to witness the glorious wings he possessed. But that joy didn't last long, because while he was still off guard, Ananta quickly counterattacked. Seizing the opportunity, he used all his might to strike the monster with a powerful blow, catching it off guard and making it take the full brunt of the terrible damage, causing the monster to feel endless pain. Realizing the situation was becoming increasingly disadvantageous, Banjak then began to unleash his own skills. He waved his hand, ordering the vines to wrap tightly around Ananta's body. The monster that had been heavily injured earlier had also healed itself. It burned with unparalleled rage. Staring at Ananta, who was bound by the vines in front of him, he declared that he would shred his body into hundreds of pieces. No sooner had he finished speaking than he launched himself into the air. The spikes inside his body were like sharp needles, constantly firing toward Ananta at the speed of light. But at that exact moment, Ananta seemed to begin unleashing all the power hidden within his body. A beam of burning red light radiated out, and then, with a loud bang, Ananta successfully broke free from Banjak's slimy vines. While the monster was still caught by surprise, Ananta flashed past him like lightning. Putting all his strength into it, he lunged straight at where the monster stood. His speed was so fast that it created twin vortices, and with just one hit, he had already taken nearly half of that arrogant monster's life. Just enough time for him to shout a vulgar curse before the thick fog began to clear. Only now could he clearly see Ananta's true form. The monster seemed unable to believe his eyes. He wore an expression of sheer shock while witnessing Ananta's transformation. Nadia, standing from afar, witnessed the entire battle scene and could not help but be surprised, for she didn't know when Ananta's body had begun to shift. She noticed that Ananta's movement speed at that moment was faster than the naked eye could follow. Banjiak began to feel anxious, silently wondering if his power lay in regeneration and shape-shifting. If that was the case, he decided to use his own overwhelming power to crush him into pieces. Thinking and acting, Banjiak launched a direct attack on Ananta. Ananta quickly took a defensive stance. With his flexible body and super strength, Ananta skillfully dodged all of Ban's continuous attacks. Glancing at the insane Banjiak, Ananta thought to himself that no matter how many times he attacked, this madman would recover over and over again. Thanks to the white lotus tree, he realized that the longer this dragged on, the more disadvantageous it would be for him. Just then, Ananta accidentally looked at the nearby ceiling. Seemingly having calculated something, he gathered momentum, launched himself into the air, and used a punch to destroy the ceiling. Banjiak used vines to bind Ananta's legs, guessing that he was plotting some foolish scheme. However, facing his taunts, Ananta did not reply, but instead asked questions to stall for time. Realizing the opportunity had arrived, Ananta said it was time for him to pay for the lives that he had eradicated. No sooner had he finished speaking than his body transformed once again. While Banjiak was still dazed, he immediately summoned the phantoms. The ghosts were called forth and appeared in increasing numbers, all striking toward Banjiak with lightning speed, terrifying him to the core, to the point that he could only scream in agony. Seeing the scene unfolding right before her, Nadia was momentarily stunned, wondering about everything, but immediately afterward, she discovered that these were the human sacrifices. At this very moment, a powerful beam of light suddenly appeared in the space. When she opened her eyes, Biharon was standing before her, bowing respectfully. When she turned to look, the white-haired man behind her had removed his disguise. It turned out he was Juyo, the true incarnation of the wings. Right at this moment, in a certain forest, Whitefoot was reporting the specific situation to her superiors via radio. She stated that there was a strange crack appearing in the sky, and if her predictions were correct, that crack was a sign that the guardian of the wings had appeared. Thus, there was a high possibility that the incarnation of the wings had now surfaced in this city. Returning to Juyo, he displayed a gloomy expression, walking slowly toward Biharon. Seeing the presence of Juyo, the true incarnation of the wings, Nadia's chest suddenly felt a sharp pain. She clutched her left chest, her face pale with pain, constantly showing anxiety. Who ultimately is the person appearing right in front of her now? As for Banjiak, he seemed to have no strength left. His whole body was covered in severe wounds. Struggling to lift his eyes to look at the one who had defeated him, Banjiak was suddenly panicked to see Juyo's appearance. He couldn't help but wonder why he was here at this time. Facing Banjiak's confusion, Juyo only asked in a cold tone if he still remembered who he was. Hearing this, Banjiak showed a look of disgust, saying how could he ever forget his former cold-blooded, cruel master. Still maintaining that indifferent, reckless attitude, Juyo slowly replied that the reason he took Banjiak's wings was to punish him for sleeping in false glory. Having said that, Juyo did not hesitate, ordering Biharon to tighten his grip on Banjiak's neck, directly making him struggle to breathe and letting out a few sounds. His eyes stared at Banjiak, who now only had his upper body left. Juyo warned him that those wings were only intended for those worthy of soaring in the blue sky. After hearing Juyo speak, Banjiak immediately became extremely angry. He thought Juyo was talking nonsense. To him, the most vicious and fearsome person was the one who had sacrificed thousands or even millions of lives just to create a body for a monster, and he simply wanted to reclaim the wings that rightfully belonged to him. However, these confessions from Banjiak only made Juyo feel that he was a useless fool, and those who had outlived their usefulness like that were only worth discarding. Thinking this, Juyo slowly used his power. A dazzling beam of light radiated out and Bonjak was instantly turned to ashes. The entire scene was captured in the eyes of Ananta. His gaze was now filled with immense anger and hatred, recalling the time before the villain Juyo had once told him that he had a small dream. He wished to pierce the sky, finding the clouds to lead the way to the land of the gods, and until that dream became reality, he would never stop, even if he had to become the enemy of the entire world. Remembering the scene where his entire tribe was destroyed, along with the gentle smile of his sister Asura, praying for his safe return, and finally the moment his respectable sister was burned to coal, Ananta furiously shouted Juyo's name. At this time, where Biharon was, they were discussing the White Lotus Tree. Biharon said that the White Lotus Tree was merely the name of a plant in the Kingdom of Paradise. It had nothing to do with what Juyo wanted. Juyo slowly picked up the white lotus flower, asserting that, compared to the world tree, it was just a fake. What he cared about right now was the connection between Nadia and his existence. It was at that very moment that Ananta powerfully surged from within the ghosts. He lunged straight at Juyo, filled with hatred and madness, but was quickly blocked by Biharon's agile skills. Ananta was now consumed by the terrifying rage within. He unleashed all his power, landing fatal blows on Biharon. The Guardian also began to take his stance, preparing to attack him at any moment. On one side, he and Biharon were locked in constant struggle, while on the other side, Juyo was staring at Nadia with a very amused expression. At the moment he reached out his hand to toy with her, Bernhardt appeared just in time, spear in hand, successfully thwarting Julio's sinister plans. At this very moment, Ananta has pushed his power to its absolute limit. Standing face to face with Julio, he lets out a feral roar. Looking at him now, Julio says with excitement that he's seeing that familiar face again, because at that moment Ananta has completely transformed into the black dragon Azi Dahaka. Taking in his surroundings, Ananta stands frozen, his face filled with utter bewilderment. He has no idea where he is right now or how he even ended up here, but more than anything he has a gut feeling that this place is bad news. Thinking this over, Ananta decides to quickly find a way out, but even if he escapes, he has no idea where he would even go. Suddenly, the black dragon Azi Dahaka appears behind him, whispering a reminder not to forget the one who stole everything from him. Sensing the dragon's presence, Ananta can hardly believe his eyes because appearing right before him is the very bearer of the death curse. Azi Dahaka stares intently at Ananta before he snaps out of this illusion. It told him to drown in his own rage and tears. Returning to reality, Ananta relentlessly unleashes brutal, fatal blows toward Biharon, completely out of control. This makes the guard think that he has lost his mind and gone insane. Thinking this, he quickly channels his power, focusing all his energy into his arm before aiming a fist at Ananta, mockingly remarking that he looks absolutely pathetic right now. The moment the guard finishes his sentence, Ananta immediately spews a massive flame straight at Biharon. The guard doesn't take it lying down, using his own power to block the attack. The violent collision of their powers creates a massive shockwave. Julio quickly uses his wings to shield himself. He glances over at Bernhardt, who is standing opposite him, and with an indifferent expression says he doesn't know if he's been roasted yet, but he's holding his ground quite well. Even though they are enemies, he has to admit that Bernhardt is truly strong. Turning back to Bernhardt, he grips his spear tightly. Telling himself he must make sure Julio meets his end right here, he absolutely won't let them reunite. But life isn't a fairy tale. Just as Bernhardt prepares to strike with his spear, Julio lands a quick hit on him. Following that, he uses his ability and a blue beam of light pierces right through Bernhardt's body, killing him on the spot. After cold-bloodedly eliminating Bernhardt, Julio casts a glance at Nydia, who is trembling uncontrollably with fear. He sneers and directly provokes her, saying she's not at all like she used to be, because he just killed Bernhardt, and she's already shaking like that. Nydia suffers in silence, biting her lip in anger as she listens to the insults coming from Julio. It turns out she had actually met this villain before. Julio then claims that Nydia is also one of the chosen ones because she resonates with the branch. That branch is the miracle that causes the cycle of rebirth to wane, yet it brings superior power. At the same time, it is Julio's desire to keep this world's heavens intact. Saying this, he slowly walks toward his younger brother, who was born from countless lives but can only exist inside a birdcage. Hearing this, Nydia cannot help but be curious, and asks for the brother's name. The boy just wears a chilling, eerie smile and says his name is Ritz. Returning to the fierce battle between Ananta and the guard, Beheron the two are fighting intensely. Ananta powerfully spreads his wings and shoots straight into the sky. After reaching a certain height, he focuses all his power, breathing out a massive fireball. As he shouts, "Heavenly Fire Orb," the fireball immediately rockets down like an arrow. Julio stands below, calmly watching the fire get closer and closer. He thinks Ananta is underestimating his abilities. Julio raises his hand slightly and slowly unleashes his power, not forgetting to add that heaven has no place for someone like him. Then he begins to chant. Along with that, a blinding blue light bursts forth. Everything has finally come to an end. This is likely the end of the White Lotus Tree, because after the battle broke out, they're having to endure the destructive force of Ananta's wings. The trump card. The manifestation of the troublemaker has completely failed. In a desolate field, Ruby is running for his life to escape the fangs of the hounds. But because he has no strength left, they catch up to him very quickly. But luckily, in the nick of time, Ananta appears and uses his axe to block them, successfully saving Ruby's life. Seeing this, the remaining hounds are terrified and run away. Realizing that Ananta is the benefactor who saved him, Ruby insists on following him everywhere, which Ananta finds extremely annoying. A while later, he looks at Ruby with irritation, asking why it keeps following him everywhere, and even tells it that he has no food for it. Even though Ananta tries his best to shoo it away, Ruby just stands there completely unfazed, leaving him no choice but to use force to drive it away. But just as Ananta swings his hand, Ruby immediately blows a large flame, making Ananta jump in terror. While he is still reeling from the sight, a loud noise suddenly erupts behind his back. Ananta turns his head in anxiety, and a giant beast has appeared right in front of him. They stare at each other for a moment, and then the beast begins to chase Ananta and his companions, back to Ananta, who now has Ruby on his head, struggling to run for his life. Without daring to look back, and with the beast hot on his heels, Ananta made a desperate leap off the cliff and landed safely. Then he saw a man in a black cloak sitting on the opposite side, still as a statue beside a dry bush, but Ananta's attention remained fixed on the beast. He glared at the monster, watching him from above, his voice filled with frustration, feeling as though it truly wanted to hunt him down to the bitter end. So Ananta quickly dropped Ruby, clenched his axes in both hands, and challenged the monster with a fierce gaze, declaring that he would make it taste the power of a black dragon descendant. Just as he finished speaking, Julio appeared behind him out of nowhere. Julio calmly removed his hood and locked eyes with the beast, successfully scaring it away, then kindly checked on how Ananta was holding up. That encounter completely changed his life. After some time, the scene shifted, and Ananta finally returned to his village, where everyone immediately greeted him. They kept asking where he had been and also questioned the identity of Julio. Just as he was about to explain, Asita suddenly appeared. She sternly demanded to know if Ananta had gone to the Mystic Beast territory again. She also didn't forget to ask about the identities of Ruby and Julio standing nearby. After hearing her, Ananta began to introduce his sister to Julio, but no sooner had he finished than Asita suddenly clutched her mouth and coughed violently, a large mouthful of blood appearing on her hand. Seeing this, Ananta was absolutely horrified. He hurriedly told her to go inside and rest. Everything unfolding was watched closely by Julio. The scene cuts to the camp. The tribal chief was extremely hospitable, inviting Julio to enjoy the village's food, as visitors were rare, and he felt he owed it to their benefactor. Since he had saved their tribesmen, the chief even allowed Julio to stay as long as he liked. This warm reception made Julio feel truly appreciated, and he thanked the chief. Immediately after, his gaze fell on Ruby, and with just one glare, Ruby panicked and scrambled to find a hiding spot. While Julio remained with the tribe, Ananta was tasked with being his guide per the chief's orders. Then the chief looked at Julio, curious as to why he had come to such a remote place. He received an immediate answer from Julio. It turned out he was an explorer researching geography, customs, and gods across various lands. He then pulled out a map. He explained that he had traveled from the south to the north, wandering across continents, learning countless customs and legends. Currently, he was tracing the story behind the death of the god of flowers in this wasteland. More precisely, he was searching for a god named Aida Haka, the first creature granted divine power, also known as one of the 6 great gods, a being revered and deeply feared by people, the manifestation of the evil black dragon Aida Haka. Dusk fell, and everyone sat together by the fire. After taking a puff of medicine, Asita's health improved. It turned out the medicine was a rare herb with extraordinary properties. It boosted the immune system and enhanced the user's overall health. Seeing her condition improve, Asita gratefully thanked Julio. Noticing she had finished, Julio prepared to leave. Before going, he reminded her to get some rest. Ananta, hearing this, was curious and asked where he planned to go. Julio didn't intend to hide it. He replied immediately that he was going to investigate the estuary area. Hearing this, Ananta quickly suggested they go fishing together today. So the next day at dawn, Ananta happily said goodbye to his sister Asita and set off with Julio, promising her he would be back soon, just as he turned to leave. Asita called him back, telling him to be careful on the road and to return to the village safely. Ananta smiled broadly, promising he would be right back. But as he turned to head out, a chill ran down his spine from the strange stares of the villagers watching him. The scene shifts to Ananta and Julio grilling fish by the shore. Holding a fish skewer, he curiously asked Julio if he planned to stay in the village for a whole week. He also asked about the progress of his investigation. Receiving the question, Julio sighed, remarking that the sweet fruit of success wasn't easy to taste. To him, finding a few fragmented pieces of history about the Black Dragon descendants was already a great success. It turned out that long ago, human ancestors had to face cruel and terrifying invaders, but thanks to the help of the Black Dragon, they succeeded in defeating them. The descendants of those human warriors then worshipped the Black Dragon as the tribe's benefactor. That was all the knowledge about the Black Dragon's descendants that Julio had gathered. Julio sighed softly, noting that the villagers refused to say anything about the Black Dragon, as if they were deliberately hiding something. Hearing this, Ananta reacted immediately, saying he thought Julio was overthinking things. Julio didn't press the matter and changed the subject, asking Ananta if he was still sneaking off to hunt behind Asita's back, because lately the number of wounds on his body had noticeably increased. Faced with Julio's questioning, Ananta seriously demanded he keep it a secret. He also said that when there is prey, one has to hunt as much as possible. In truth, Ananta's parents had fallen ill and passed away when he was just a child, which was why Asita was so protective of him. Ananta's eyes filled with sadness as he told Julio not to worry about his business, then showed him the wounds on his body. It didn't hurt at all. To break the awkward silence, Ananta quickly changed the subject, wondering why. Julio was searching for the gods. After hearing this, Julio slowly explained that he wanted to find God's treasure, which it turns out those gods were guarding. Those sources of God's power are forces that transcend all the laws of the world and human understanding. The treasure consists of 6 items containing the strength and power of the gods. If anyone could get their hands on it, they would surely become an entity far beyond this world. After hearing the entire explanation from Julio, Ananta immediately asked anxiously about the old scale. This directly triggered a sense of suspicion in Julio, who assumed that Ananta must have known something, realizing his attitude had been a bit careless. Ananta helplessly scratched his head and decided to tell Julio everything, saying this was a story he heard from his sister. Long ago, in a fit of rage, the Black Dragon couldn't stop at just driving out the invaders. It didn't stop until the entire grassland turned to ash. The Black Dragon had entrusted one of its scales to the ancestors to keep itself in check, and it fell into a deep sleep after dividing its power. Afterward, Ananta's ancestors built a temple in the canyon to worship. The Black Dragon then sent the village's elite warriors to guard it and keep the scale from falling into the wrong hands. Hearing this, Julio stuttered, intending to ask Ananta to take him there. But before he could finish, Ananta saw right through him and refused, realizing he couldn't go to that place. Julio then suggested Ananta take him somewhere else. A while later, they finally arrived. Looking at the magnificent scenery in front of him, Julio said he wanted to pierce the sky, to find the clouds leading to the land of the gods. He affirmed he would not stop until that dream became reality, even if it meant becoming an enemy of this entire world. Saying that, Julio stared at Ananta's disbelieving face opposite him and slowly said, "It's all caused by the Black Dragon's curse. The servant of the Demon King, the ruler of curses and death, the one who defied everything. Everything became a pawn for that wicked god, yet they gave God's treasure to such a pathetic tribe. Your parents' deaths and your sister's severe illness. It's all because of the Black Dragon's curse." As night fell, the space around the village was enveloped in a silent darkness. After starting awake, Asita dreamily opened her eyes. Looking at Ananta's sleeping spot right next to her, she realized he had been gone all night. Feeling uneasy, Asita slowly stepped out from inside the small hut. The cold night air made her uncomfortable, and she coughed a few times. She was worried, wondering where Ananta had gone staying out so late. Gently looking up at the sky, Asita hoped her younger brother wouldn't catch a cold. The scene changes. At this moment, in front of a cave entrance, while two guards were cautiously looking around, Julio suddenly appeared from afar. Noticing his presence, they immediately took a defensive stance, pointing their spears straight at him, ordering him to stand still. Even though Julio was extremely annoyed by their actions, the guards still fulfilled their duty, saying that anyone without permission was not allowed to enter this place. Yet, despite the warnings from the guards, Julio didn't feel worried at all. On the contrary, he brazenly continued to approach. Realizing Julio was still stubbornly refusing to stop, one of the guards became angry and quickly attacked Julio with his spear. But before the guard could even act, Julio lightning fast grabbed the spear with his hand. And in the extremely surprised eyes of the guard, he used his fist with great force, taking him down in one clean blow. Witnessing the entire scene, the guard next to him was momentarily stunned. While that guard was still trying to understand what happened, Julio unleashed his special move and successfully took down the other one. After finishing them off, Julio coldly turned his gaze toward the rock behind him, demanding the person hiding inside to quickly come out. Hearing that, Ananta stepped out cautiously. He held a glowing flower in his hand, silently marveling at Julio's terrifying power. With just a few simple strikes, he had easily defeated the tribe's elite warriors. Returning to Julio, seeing that Ananta seemed to be distracted, he urged him to hurry because he wanted to finish everything before sunrise. After a while of entering the cave and fighting the Guardian army, they finally reached the spot, and just at this moment, the flower in Ananta's hand emitted an increasingly intense light. He was extremely surprised, staring at the flower in his hand, then looking at Julio with a head full of questions. But Julio didn't bother to answer. He just reassured him and stepped toward the wooden box in front, gently pushing the lid open. The final scale immediately appeared before them both. Realizing only the scale in front was placed in the opposite direction, Julio was extremely excited because he had recognized its advantage. Afterward, he acted grateful for Ananta's help, but when he mentioned curing his sister, Julio immediately betrayed him. He quickly snatched the hand holding the flower from Ananta and directed it toward the scale. Instantly, a powerful beam of light from the Dragon Canyon radiated outward along with the violent shaking of the ground. The black dragon was successfully summoned and rushed straight toward the light beam. Seeing what was happening right before their eyes, the tribe members were extremely unsettled. Which idiot released God's power? Returning to Ananta by now, he had lost both arms, weakly looking at the extremely exhilarated Julio in front of him, seeing him slowly reach out to grab the strange flower inside the pillar of light and thrust it straight into his own chest. A blinding blue light began to appear and spread everywhere inside his body. After a moment, the black dragon finally reached the Dragon Canyon. It warned that Julio had touched the dragon's weakness, appearing extremely dangerous as it spoke to him about the consequences of this. Immediately after, the black dragon solemnly stated its name, then ordered Julio to declare his name. As soon as he spoke his name, the black dragon immediately merged with him. From that moment on, the embodiment of those powerful, terrifying wings finally appeared. Ananta crashed face first into the ground, then lifted his head, breathing heavily from exhaustion. Standing before him was Juyo, the embodiment of the Dahaka wings, his eyes glowing red as he sensed the divine treasures within Ananta's body. How could a mere human body possibly stand up to the wings of a star? The Dahaka demanded to know what happened to the previous owners of those treasures. Juyo scoffed, calling the questions useless, then spread his wings, glowing projectiles materializing as he replied. He claimed he had finished them all off and stolen the treasures for himself. He fired the projectiles at Ananta, triggering a massive explosion that kicked up thick clouds of dust from the trembling earth. As the Dahaka closed in, Juyo hovered above, sneering that since the beast had separated the divine treasures from its own body, its energy was running dry. He declared he would bury the ghosts of the gods himself. The Dahaka glowed a fierce, angry red, challenging him to see if he truly had the power to do it. It opened its maw and unleashed a torrent of red fire, but Juyo flapped his wings and effortlessly dodged the flames. Enraged, the Dahaka beat its wings hard, shooting into the sky with blinding speed to pursue him, while Juyo continued to weave through the air to evade the attack. The Dahaka surrounded itself with spheres of fire, then whipped its wings to launch them at Juyo, catching him off guard. Desperate Juyo unleashed his own light-based technique. He focused a massive surge of light in front of him to block the fireballs. The two forces collided, creating a deafening blast. Through the smoke, the Azidahaka glared at him with those burning red eyes growling. It beat its wings even harder, enveloping itself in a red aura before slamming its wings forward. A wave of crimson energy surged toward Juyo, who just smirked at the display. Juyo spread his wings wide, gathering his power and firing beams of light that met the beast's attack head-on, triggering a chain of smaller violent explosions. The Azidahaka was caught off guard by a sudden massive beam of light screaming toward it. The resulting blast was absolutely colossal. The sound and shockwaves shook the entire village area. Asita clenched her fists, looking up at the sky where Ananta lay broken and covered in wounds. He trembled with every pained gasp, blood spilling from his lips. Both of his arms were gone, and he collapsed to his knees on the stone, breathing in ragged hitches as he stared off into the distant sky. He whispered, "Sister." As the Azidahaka plummeted to the ground with a bone-shaking crash, lying motionless in the dirt amidst a cloud of debris. Looking down from above, Juyo flashed a smug grin, sneering as he declared the Azidahaka defeated. He mocked the beast, claiming its heart was shredded to pieces, then looked up toward the heavens, flapping his wings with a satisfied smile. Finally, he could ascend to heaven. He soared away. He left a trail of light stretching into the sky. Ananta's eyes welled with tears, wondering how it had all come to this. He had done everything for his sister. Suddenly, he was startled by the voice of the dying Azidahaka, telling him that he was the one who had aided the embodiment of those wings. Tears streamed down his face, his whole body shaking uncontrollably. He begged for forgiveness, insisting that everything he had done was only for his sister's sake. The Azidahaka's eyes burned red in the face of death. It was far from pleased. Its entire body turned a glowing crimson. It vowed to tear him apart limb from limb. The Azidahaka mustered every last ounce of strength, struggling to rise as it beat its wings in a fever of red. As its wings fully unfurled, it shrieked toward the heavens. Ananta stared at the sight, his face drenched in tears, whispering only two words, "Demon King." The Azidahaka beat its wings hard and took to the sky, surging forward. Ananta's eyes widened as he watched it go. It was headed for the village. In no time, the Azidahaka reached their home and unleashed a torrent of fire. The village was consumed by flames, and the screams of the people filled the air. They tried to run, but it was too late. His sister was consumed by the fire as well. Amidst the roaring flames and agonizing cries, Ananta could only stay there and scream, "Sister!" The Azidahaka turned back to where Ananta lay. It lunged straight at him. His body was swallowed by a red aura, and every cell in his body seemed to burn crimson. The Azidahaka hissed, "Foolish human," and with its final breath it delivered a curse. "You will be forever haunted by death and endless catastrophe." It faded away like a dying spark. Back in the wreckage, Ananta slowly stirred, opening his eyes. The sky was bright, but the trees were scorched and dry. Juyo and Rit looked into the distance, realizing the road ahead was longer than they could have ever imagined. Nadia stared in shock, frozen, as a crack appeared. Julio spoke up, returning to their sanctuary, and Biron struck the crack, revealing a different dimension. Julio paused upon hearing Nadia speak, which also caught Rit's attention. Nadia said they called him a cowardly creature, self-deceived into believing he was a god. But the child right before her was the true god. She hugged herself, saying she had no memories before meeting him, and asked him to tell her. Julio smirked. He confirmed that it was the brat Ananta saying everything was born of cause and effect, and when cause and effect vanished, they would disappear. He flashed a sinister smile with glowing eyes. Destiny was like that, and he truly looked forward to the day they would meet again. Nadia frowned upon hearing those words. Meanwhile, Rachel Sayanha was soaking in a bath, her fiery red hair spread over the rim when Mo and Sayanha arrived to report that Lord Bernhardt had returned from the southern surveillance territory. She slid up, saying it had been a long time since she heard such good news, adding that if it had been bad news, she wouldn't have known what to do. Rachel Sa let Mo drape a robe over her. Sayanha continued, reporting that according to the news received, there was an incarnation accompanied by 2 humans with him. She asked if the incarnation had wings. Mo replied that it would be best for Her Highness to see and judge for herself. She smiled with satisfaction as Bernhardt and his group entered a large castle on the mountain. He was with Nadia, looking no different from Ananta. He claimed to have a deep vendetta against the winged incarnation, so he invited them to the organization's headquarters. On the surface, he used the excuse of fighting together, but clearly what he wanted was Ananta's power, and after the battle ended. The rabbit girl didn't let anyone know her whereabouts. Nadia walked with a determined face. She could have gone elsewhere, but somehow. She chose to go to the northern lands to meet someone. That person was Duke Bernhardt. Arriving in the room, everyone was present, standing in a neat line. Ruba looked toward where everyone was moving, while Taken crossed his arms with eyes shut, announcing that Her Majesty had arrived. Rachel Saw entered with Mo and Cyan Ha. Nadia stood watching, frowning, and thinking. That person is the Grand Princess, Munghuk Vankaria of the Warrior Kingdom, an organization of militia that hates the winged incarnation. Rachel Saw sat on her throne, flashing a refreshing smile that embodied a powerful queen. Bernhardt bowed respectfully to greet Rachel Saw, and she returned the greeting, congratulating him. She demanded he recount the results of the expedition. According to the original plan to reach the Kefei's temple, they had finished off a group of arena participants. Then they disguised themselves as them. There were some unexpected twists, but in the end he infiltrated the temple where he met the winged incarnation, Julio. Everyone turned to look when they heard his name. Rachel Saw continued asking about the events, and Bernhardt calmly recounted how he had lunged into a fight with Julio right after. But shamefully he admitted he was defeated by him. Hearing that, she frowned and rebuked him. So you returned empty-handed and in such disgrace. He felt quite uncomfortable saying victory and defeat were part of a warrior's life, and no matter how many times he lost, there would come a day when his own hands would finish him off. She snorted at his attitude, then burst into loud laughter, saying, "That's the Bernhardt I know." Only then did Rachel Saw notice the person next to him. Nadia bowed to greet her, and he introduced her as the incarnation of nature, saying she was part of a group hunting the winged incarnation. Bernhardt respectfully told Rachel Saw that Nadia was a new ally who would assist Leviton, and thanks to her help during the expedition, he was able to bring people back to meet Her Highness. She asked where the others were. Mo spoke up, then saying, "They're called people, but it's just a savage man and a normal young girl." She offered to cooperate in exchange for their care and protection. The daughter's health was doing quite well, so she would soon be sent to the civilians' homes. The savage man was being treated at the medical facility because his condition had improved. But his current state was quite serious. He was in a deep coma with no response. Mo suggested that if she wanted to use force, she could take him along too. But she refused. Rachel Saw walked over to Nadia to greet her. Rachel Saw stepped close and held out her hand. Nadia took her hand and bowed politely to greet her. "Thank you for the warm welcome, Your Highness." But that wasn't all. Rachel Saw then pressed for the reason why Nadia was allied with Leviton, suspecting she was a spy. Nadia replied very quickly that she wanted to reach a compromise regarding the branch that had become one with her. She wanted to know all the information Leviton held about it. Someone called out to Rachel Saw, and they both turned to look. Ruba felt angry and shouted, "Why bother listening to her words?" As soon as she walked in, Ruba smelled the stench of the winged incarnation, and after speaking, she pointed directly at Nadia's face and asked if she had been given the branch by the winged incarnation. Bernhardt also glanced at her. Rachel Saw wondered and turned back to ask her. Nadia touched her chest. Ruba said, "That's right. Ever since meeting him, the branch has been resonating with me, but the fact that it merged with me is clear proof that I don't have any information." Rachel Saw turned to ask Bernhardt if he had told Nadia about the branch. He replied that because he hadn't received permission, he hadn't revealed any information yet. If Nadia was the person the winged incarnation was looking for, then this was clearly a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for them. While she was speaking, someone called out, "Your Highness." Rachel Saw shouted angrily, "What is it interrupting like this?" The person apologized for the interruption, saying it was urgent, as there was a massacre happening in the residential area. At that moment, the image of the fiery red Itahaka appeared. He remembered being invaded by it himself. Ananta felt as if he were no longer himself, his mind gradually losing sanity. It tilted its head up and roared. The entire area was burning. It walked forward, step by step, cautiously. It stomped on the ground, then flew up and used all its speed to dash forward. Then it stopped at a high clearing and roared to the heavens. Ananta stared in shock at the sight of the village burned to the ground. Everything from the people to the huts were all gone. He stepped out of his shell, dragging his broken body step by step. The image of his beautiful, gentle sister smiling appeared along with her voice. "Be careful on your way, Ananta." His beautiful sister had been burned to a crisp. Ananta stared wide-eyed at the charred remains. He let out a piercing scream and clutched his sister's body, trembling violently. He sobbed uncontrollably, his heart shattered as streams of red blood trickled from his eyes. Then he let out a desperate roar. His heart was consumed by hatred. He vowed to kill Juyo with his own 2 hands. Ananta's tear-filled eyes fluttered open. He sat up dazed, not knowing where he was. A cute little girl was sitting by the bed looking at him, calling him Conan. He wondered who she was, but suddenly he froze. Was this girl a goddess? Ananta braced his hands against his legs, preparing to get up. There was no time left to think. His face twisted with rage. He had to find that guy Juyo right now. Suddenly he coughed hard. The girl looked up concerned. He gasped for air, choking as his vision began to blur. Then he collapsed, the price of abusing the power of the curse. The girl ran outside quickly. Ananta frowned, looking ahead. The city was packed with people. Looking toward the other side, there stood Ananta, wounded, taking every step with difficulty. He looked around. Where was this place? It was a vast space, yet he couldn't see the sky. Is this an underground city? A man demanded he stop looking at him with suspicion, clearly seeing he wasn't a local. They pointed their spears at him, demanding he surrender peacefully or face force. He exhaled sharply, ready to challenge them. Just then a man stepped forward, scratching his head, and asked, "Has anyone seen the brat from his place?" Ananta locked eyes on the mark on the man's hand. He had been taught to recognize that symbol. It would help him track the incarnation of wings. Anyone belonging to that faction was sure to bear this mark. Ananta reached out to touch the man, but suddenly a blade flashed right before his eyes. The man swung his sword at Ananta, his eyes gleaming. He didn't like being touched from behind. Ananta braced himself, fists raised. The man sensed how strong he was and backed off quickly. "You won't get past me today," the man smirked. "Tough one. You look like you're ready to die." Ananta's body erupted with waves of red fire. Why did he have such an aura? Ananta demanded to know about the mark on his right hand. With a face full of hatred, he clenched his fists, asking what connection he had to the incarnation of wings. The man said nothing, charging straight at Ananta with his blade. Ananta dodged quickly, though caught off guard. The man unleashed a flurry of rapid strikes, closing in on him, but he dodged every single one. Ananta was backed against the wall. The man swung his sword again, saying, "If you want something, take it with your own power." With that, he swung his blade, unleashing a serpent strike. Dust swirled violently. As the smoke cleared, the man froze, stunned to see Ananta with two massive glowing red arms. Ananta glared at him, pure killing intent in his eyes. The man sneered, "What? What kind of arms are those?" A soldier screamed, "Call for the Queen! Request urgent reinforcements!" Ananta's eyes flashed. He lunged at the man, his giant clawed arms ready. He unleashed a relentless, terrifyingly fast assault. The man was agile, dodging every move while analyzing the situation. "This is too dangerous. If we clash head-on, even a sword won't hold him back." Regardless, the man hadn't been in his best condition to begin with. After a barrage of attacks, Ananta stopped and suddenly crumpled to the ground, seemingly in agony. The man looked like he had been waiting for this moment. "There's an opening." He lunged, driving his sword straight through Ananta. A deep, guttural growl emerged from Ananta. His face had warped into the visage of a beast. The man quickly withdrew his sword and backed away. Ananta roared his entire body, transforming into a massive, ferocious monster. The man crouched, ready to fight again. Suddenly he startled, realizing he actually felt fear. A voice rang out from behind him. As he retreated, a woman, Rajelsa, rushed in from behind, swinging her sword down hard on the monster's head. Nadia cried out in a panic. "Wait, please wait. He's not an enemy, don't kill him." Rajelsa looked stern, her voice cold. "If he harms my people, I won't spare him, whoever he is. You ugly monster, I'll finish you right now." The monster form Ananta suddenly used its own hands to claw at itself. The sight was horrific. The soldiers stood frozen, unable to believe what they were witnessing. "Is he choking himself?" The monster collapsed with a heavy thud. Nadia watched, worried. Rajelsa approached and saw the monster had reverted back into the form of Ananta. She was completely shocked. "What is this guy?" Rajelsa and 4 others sat around a round table. An aide stood by to report, "As you commanded, the barbarian army has been imprisoned in the dungeon, and the incarnation of nature is under the surveillance of the royal army and has received orders to wait in place as commanded. We have monitored their every move, but chaos broke out anyway." A man standing nearby added, "Rumors spreading throughout the fortress is only a matter of time." Rajelsa spoke up. "I trust you are all aware of the situation. We will now begin the leadership meeting. The main topic is the arrangement for the man named Ananta. The final decision will be announced shortly. Now that we've heard everyone's opinions," Ruba rested his chin on his hand, scoffing. How much longer do you plan on keeping such a dangerous guy in the fortress? Why even bother debating it? Just finish him off already. Ao chuckled. Why so tense, man? Ruba looked at him. He's interesting, I'll give you that. How about we just use him to our full advantage? Taken crossed his arms, frowning. Shut it, Ao. I've got no interest in him. Rachel Say turned to Bernhardt. Do you know anything about him? Bernhardt replied respectfully, I do, Your Majesty. Ruba balled his hand into a fist and slammed it onto the table, shouting in anger, Are you kidding me? You bring a monster into the fortress without even a heads up. What the hell are you thinking, Bernhardt? Bernhardt's face darkened as he replied, His very presence has already caused enough chaos in the fortress. No matter what anyone says, I am determined to let him stay. Queen Rachel Saw said, I didn't expect his power to be this unstable and terrifying. But it's true that he holds a grudge against the incarnation of the wings. If we can harness that power under our command, he'll be an invincible weapon. I strongly urge you to consider letting him join the rebel forces. Ruba slammed the table and stood up abruptly. Rachel Say you're really going to listen to this nonsense? Hey, Ao, you fought him, didn't you? Why didn't you just fight for real and kill him while you were at it? Ao sat with his legs crossed, chin in hand. You're the one who picked a fight with him first, and now you're saying this? It's a bit shameless, but Bernhardt's right. This guy will be useful to us. If you'd gone all out back there, you both would have ended up either crippled or dead. Ruba's eyes widened in shock. What? Rachel Say spoke up. Come out, messenger with the rabbit feet. Whitefoot stepped forward with a radiant smile. The lovely girl with the distinctive rabbit feet had arrived at the royal summons. At the place where Ananta was being held, Blackfoot was speaking to him in a mocking tone. How are you doing, Ananta? I really thought you'd turn tail and run. Looks like my worries were for nothing. But the way you're looking at me, and is just so intriguing. Whitefoot took off her hat, smiling brightly to greet everyone. I present myself to the Queen and the noble heroes. This humble messenger humbly introduces herself to you all. Ruba, seeing a stranger, didn't stop questioning her. Who are you? And how did you get in here? Ao looked toward Whitefoot and saw something peeking out from behind her. Rachel poked her head out. Ao smiled happily and reached out to greet her as she ran toward him. The moment I look away, this troublemaker disappears again. All right. Bernhardt spoke up asking about Whitefoot. Queen Rachel Saw, who is she? Rachel Say replied, no need to panic. She has the power to traverse space. She's a high-ranking member of an elite organization called the Rabbit Feet. Before you all returned, they came to make a deal with me. She recounted what Whitefoot had told her. Are you not interested in a power capable of eradicating the incarnation of the wings? At first I thought of it as just a half-hearted gamble, but then she clearly had it all figured out from the start. Saying this, she looked toward Whitefoot. That invitation is tempting. Tell me, what are your conditions? Whitefoot laughed and clapped her hands. You are truly perceptive. I want the Rabbit Feet and Levitan to form a lasting alliance. In exchange, the Rabbit Feet will go all out to defeat the incarnation of the wings and deliver the incarnation of the beast to you all. A loud voice cut through the air, startling Whitefoot. Everyone turned toward the source of the noise. It was Ananta. He criticized Whitefoot. You've caused all this chaos, and you still dare to try and manipulate others with your words. I don't need any deals or compromises. Rachel, who was resting peacefully in Rachel Saw's arms, heard Ananta's voice, jumped up, ran quickly toward him, and climbed onto him. He stood proudly pointing at himself. The one who will finish off the incarnation of the wings is me. Ruba looked like he was about to explode, his hands transforming into claws. A criminal belongs in a dungeon. Give the order, Rachel Say. I'll finish him off right now. Rachel Say didn't seem rushed. Calm down, Ruba. I want to know the whole story. Her eyes carefully studied Ananta. Interesting. Every scar on his body is a testament to the battles he's endured. The bloodlust hidden beneath his skin is surging at a level more formidable than anyone I've ever met, the incarnation of slaughter. Whitefoot stepped closer to Ananta. Well, everyone, this is Ananta the Rabbit Feet's strongest card. In her head, a question arose. Is this guy really the incarnation of the beast? Ananta used his large hand to shove Whitefoot's small head down his eyes, bloodshot. Since when did I become some item you picked up? Are you tired of living or what? Blackfoot, standing nearby, grabbed his arm, trying to coax him. But didn't Ananta already lose to the incarnation of the wings? You can't win fighting alone, let's form an alliance. You can't take them on alone, let's team up. He glanced at her, gritting his teeth. You bastard, Blackfoot. he taunted, looking at Whitefoot, who was currently being held down by Ananta. Whitefoot wore a pained, bitter smile. You saw it yourself, didn't you? More importantly, he didn't seem stable at all, but it looks like Ananta's adjustment is complete. Ragelza asked Ananta, "Are you truly capable of killing the incarnation of the wings?" Before Ananta could speak, Whitefoot interrupted. "Your Highness, as I was saying." Ragelza's face darkened, his voice dropping low. "Whitefoot, I am asking Ananta." He looked at Ananta. "Where you come from doesn't matter. There is still a place for you here. But the issue is that I want to see your strength and abilities with my own eyes. What matters here is your infinite wrath toward the incarnation of the wings." Ananta looked at her and asked, "Hey, what's your name?" She looked him straight in the eye and replied, "Rajasa and Haza." He lifted his hand off Whitefoot's head, clenched it into a fist, and held it out in front of him. "You ask if I can kill the incarnation of the wings? Well, I possess a curse that steals the abilities of others. The more monsters I devour, the more my power grows. Therefore, my power is infinite. If you want an alliance, learn your place, you brats." Rachel Saw didn't get angry at his words. Instead, he laughed excitedly and walked toward him. "In the name of the Queen, I declare, Leviton will ally with you, incarnation of vengeance." He turned to order Scan and Mo to bring Nadia here. Elsewhere, Biheron pushed the door open and stood by the carcass of a beast wearing a bizarre, twisted grin. Blood was splattered everywhere, all over his face, his limbs, and his clothes. Juyo, draped in a cloak decorated with wings, laughed deviously. "This is just a celebration for our third member." Biheron knelt and bowed. "As you command, my lord." "Everyone is here," Juyo ordered. "Open the door for me." Biheron immediately used his power, causing sharp ice spikes to erupt around them, revealing an incredibly dark place before them. Beasts were growling and acting frantically. Juyo looked down from above at the abyss filled with wailing monsters. His eyes and voice were icy cold. "Don't forget that you have all been abandoned by God. Because you were possessed by evil spirits and lost your humanity, there is no way for you to return to your original forms. Wake up." Suddenly he spread glowing wings and shouted, "Oh, you lost souls! Those scorned by the world and those trampled by fate, is this death truly a fitting end for your... What existence? Is this truly the meaning of your existence?" He dove straight down, standing in the midst of the monsters. "I am not of this world, but I am the one who turns the wreckage of this place into a bridge leading to the land of God. Show me your strength. Whoever remains standing until the end will be granted the grace of the wings." The monsters understood his words. They became deranged and tore each other apart, a truly gruesome sight. Blood splattered everywhere, yet he stood there. Without flinching or showing fear, he let out a twisted laugh. On Rachel Saw's side, Nadia was brought in. She stared wide-eyed at Ananta and Whitefoot, too. Whitefoot held up his hat and smiled brightly at her. "Miss Nadia, it's been a while, hasn't it?" She looked over at Blackfoot and asked, "Who is that?" Rachel Saw reassured her, "Don't be so tense. I've ordered the other commanders to stand down so you can be at ease." Nadia glanced at Ananta, thinking to herself, "He was clearly unstable just a moment ago. Was that just a coincidence?" Rachel Saw continued, "I just had a chat with that fellow Ananta over there. You two, I declare you are both officially members of Leviton." Ananta frowned, looking annoyed. "Since when did I say I was on your side?" Bernhardt quickly persuaded him, "It's just a temporary alliance. It doesn't matter. We need your strength to catch the incarnation of the wings, and since this is a temporary alliance, you can also make use of our help. Wouldn't that be quite convenient? And as for you, Nadia, if you want the answers, you are forced to cooperate with Leviton from this moment on. The road ahead will not be easy. I only hope you are ready to receive the answer you've always been searching for." Nadia's gaze was firm. "I have already expressed my intentions very clearly. I hope you will tell me about the branch embedded deep within this body." Rajasa spoke up. "Miss Taylor, it also has another name, a branch of the World Tree. Bernhardt mentioned it in his report. Surely you witnessed it while fighting at cafes. How a brutal creature transforms into a god, right?" Nadia immediately thought of Zid. "That kid," Rachel Saw continued. "The true nature of the branch granted by the wings is usually a catalyst for evolving from a wicked creature into a god." Bernhardt added, "You also had to endure the influence of Juyo to become a god. You are the one who was born with the blood of the incarnation of the wings. Your current form is the result of the branch's power. Perhaps your original form was some kind of demon." Her face turned pale as she stammered, "No, that can't be. If the incarnation of the wings truly has power equal to the Supreme Being, why use it on a wicked creature instead of some god? The branch also has the power to turn a god into a wicked creature." Rachel Saw frowned, explaining to Nadia while remembering when she was young. "I witnessed it with my own eyes the day my homeland, Valkyria, turned into ashes. The god of Valkyria was turned into a demon by the incarnation of the wings." Ananta, still scowling and showing that same unpleasant attitude, spoke up. "That doesn't sound right at all. Based on what you two just said, this girl might be a follower of Juyo or some other evil entity. Look at her, she's just a fool who couldn't even kill a bug. Bernhardt told me so. She is very special. Perhaps she is a being from the place closest to the world cloud. Juyo is searching for her," you asked with wide eyes. The world cloud, Rajelsa replied. "That's right. Legend has it that our royal family has many anecdotes about the branches of the world tree. The world cloud is a rift dimension that appeared alongside the birth of the world tree. The embodiment of the wings always determined to invade the world of the Supreme Being through that rift. That is why Juyo is always trying to create a creature capable of becoming a vessel for the world tree. However, the power from the branches is so immense that an ordinary creature could hardly withstand it. The number of people who can hold that power is very small. This is the crucial point. We are here to retrieve the branch in Juyo's possession. With your help, we will be able to overcome him. The royal guards have been turned into demons." Rajelsa stood up from her queen's throne, gathered everyone, and declared to those present, "Commander Au of the 3 stars. Commander Rupa of the 4 stars. I order you both to march straight to the Pasa region." The soldiers below raised their fists in unison, shouting, "Understood!" She placed both hands on the sword, which was plunged straight into the ground. She looked incredibly majestic. Her voice firm. "In the name of the Vanguard, establish a friendly forward base in that local area for me. Our army's goal is to drive out the evil forces. Demons have taken over the Paso region. May everyone's battle be a great success." 3 days ago, Whitefoot sat down to talk with Nadia. "This is Valkyria's secret fortress. In the north of the continent, this place has 500 elite warriors under the command of the Queen, and a small number of mercenaries under Bernhardt's orders. Under their protection, thousands of citizens have been able to settle down and live in peace. Those commanders possess strength comparable to gods. Leviathan can be considered the most powerful resistance organization among the forces fighting against the wings. Ananta was defeated in the battle at Kefest, so strengthening our side is for the best." Nadia added, "From this contact with Leviathan to the meeting with the Queen, it seems this was all their plot." Whitefoot continued, "True, but the fact that Nadia didn't escape was unexpected. Regardless, we have gained a powerful ally. Ananta's power is a double-edged sword. It can bring the power and authority of a demon. But if he doesn't receive that power immediately, he will lose his sanity and turn into a monster." The two looked over at Ananta and Breakfast, who were sitting nearby. Nadia asked, "But who is that over there?" Whitefoot replied, "This is Breakfast, also a member of the organization like me. She has hypnotic powers to suppress the anger inside." Ananta, "But that is only a temporary measure. Hunting down demons quickly to break the curse is what's necessary. Having said that much, Nadia, do you want to form a pact with us?" Nadia was surprised and slightly suspicious. "What kind of pact?" Whitefoot smiled friendly and held out his hand. "Please help Ananta subdue the embodiment of the wings. In exchange, we promise to ensure your safety, Ms. Nadia. Inside you, Nadia is a branch that can attract the embodiment of the wings. When that happens, he will surely reveal his true form to you." Nadia replied frankly, "I don't agree. I just don't want anyone else to have to be a human sacrifice. I don't want to just stand by and watch. So there is no need for any exchange." She held out her hand. "To protect innocent people from being sacrificed to Juyo Whitefoot, I will cooperate with you." Whitefoot scratched his head and gave a wry smile. "This isn't exactly a pact, but—" He reached out and shook Nadia's hand. "Very well, the negotiation is approved." Whitefoot stood up excitedly and said, "Now I will tell you the upcoming plan. Queen Rajelsa will use the power from Ananta to retake the ancient capital of Valkyria. They must be preparing to take back the Fukvan right now, a land cursed and scattered with corpses. The ruler of that land, named Pasa, is—" Nadia immediately said, "The embodiment of the sacred Alicon." Whitefoot replied, That's right, he is a one-horned Pegasus, one of the 6 primeval spirits, and also a minion of the god who protects Valkyra. According to the Queen Alicon, turned into a demon shortly after encountering the embodiment of the wings. Ananta's voice rang out simply, "Revenge! The monster that devastated an entire country." The mission is simple enough that even a fool could understand. Ananta stepped closer to the two of them, clenching his fists, as if he wanted to kill someone right there. "Little messenger, take me to the next hunting ground." Whitefoot felt helpless with him. All right. Why are you so impatient? The expedition will take place in 3 days. The alliance consists of 2 commanders from Leviton with a total force of 100 men. Whitefoot opened a black hole. "The coordinates for Fuck Van have been locked. You can go whenever you want." Ao stepped out, hands on her hips, winking. "Girls. Not bad." Rupa clenched her fist, full of spirit. "Everyone don't go getting yourselves killed. It's still too early to go to Valhalla." Ananta was sweating profusely, panting heavily. Blackfoot teased, "Feeling nauseous already, Ananta." Ananta's eyes were full of killing intent. "Of course. Right now, I have more than enough strength to kill anyone." A dark place, gloomy and cold air appeared. The trees here were left only with bare trunks and branches. Ao and Rupa ran to the mouth of the black hole. Rupa suddenly noticed something and shouted, "Ao, look out!" Ao looked down and saw a ferocious beast with its mouth wide open towards them. Nadia followed quickly, manifesting branches that twisted into the shape of a horse to confront the beast, but the beast was too strong. It immediately pressed Nadia's branches down. Ananta appeared using his giant arm to punch the beast directly in the head. Ao and Rupa stood watching the whole thing. Ao smirked. "This mission is more interesting than I thought. All the soldiers have made it down here as well." Ananta sat leaning against the Blackfoot tree, checking his watch before closing it and surveying the surroundings. It seems not even a single ray of light can penetrate the Rajala fortress. Rajala stood there, hands pressed against the table where an Arupa map lay, saying, "From now on, I will make things clear. The upcoming expedition for Squads 3 and 4, including the surrounding northern coastline, is mostly covered in grasslands, as this is the natural habitat of the fish folk and the spirit tribes. In the past, thanks to their help, Valkyria was more than capable of resisting invasions, but now we can only let those deadly troops spread misery everywhere. Building strong fortifications is our top priority. The 2 of you will lead the vanguard to establish the front line." Ao asked her, "Is it really necessary to build an entire fortress? Why don't we just utilize the power of Whitefoot the rabbit's avatar and be done with it? If there's any flaw in the plan, it will be because of Whitefoot." Rajesa replied, "If we could use the royal path directly, that would be great. But Whitefoot's ability can only take us from the starting point to the safest location. Currently, Vengen can only reach the forest located south of the royal road. Without prior preparation, it's impossible to go any further, which means someone must accept the risk of traveling thousands of kilometers away from the royal road to ensure safety. To prepare for this, Ananta and Nadia must join the Rupa Alliance forces." Rupa reassured her, "Don't worry, Rajesa. Having me and Ao is enough." Rajesa seemed to ignore Rupa's words, her expression still extremely tense. "Squad leader Rupa, this is the Queen's order. 1 week after receiving this order, rendezvous with Ananta's group at headquarters. And one more thing, don't die. Come back safely to reunite with your brothers at Ananta's place." Nadia looked down at Ruby crawling on the ground. "I'm counting on you, Ruby." Ruby moved forward, opened its mouth, and breathed out a massive burst of fire, incinerating the beast. Rupa looked toward Ananta, who was leaning against the tree, head bowed, while Blackfoot sat crouched, watching him. Rupa clicked her tongue in annoyance. Seeing this, Ao handed her a piece of paper. "Why are you always looking so dissatisfied?" Rupa replied coolly. "We're about to enter the forest anyway." "And hey, and from now on we'll be comrades in arms fighting together again." Rupa retorted without restraint. "That sounds nauseating. Comrades in arms is just a phrase used to mock those who have been cast aside. Someone you are willing to entrust your life to at any time and in any situation that is a true comrade. Don't you dare call a nobody like that my comrade." Rupa stepped toward Ananta and confronted him loudly. "Looks like some people only act tough for a second before wilting. I didn't expect you to be much weaker than I imagined. How could someone who has no protector by their side be incapable of lifting a finger? And yet you're our ally." Ananta frowned. "If you have something to say, just say it straight." Rupa didn't hesitate to continue. "It seems Rajesa is very interested in your abilities, but I don't think so. You can't even control your own power. Even if you managed to take down a god before, have you truly learned to restrain yourself in the heat of your rage? Nadia walked over with Ruby surprised and asked, "Really? What happened?" Rupa replied to Nadia, "He looked just like a ticking time bomb back then." Ananta could no longer hold back. He stood up, stepped close to Rupa, and said loudly, "I told you if you have something to say, just say it." Rupa looked like she was about to explode. "I want you to stop flapping your mouth. You jerk, you and your pack had better pack up and get out of my sight. I'll let Rajesa know you were too scared and ran away." She bared her claws, her eyes glowing deep red. "If you don't agree, I'll tear you apart right here." Ananta, also enraged, prepared to transform. His eyes flashed with murderous intent. "Shut your mouth before I—" Blackfoot reached out, accompanied by a scent wafting through. "That's enough. That's enough." Ruba found herself standing alone, surrounded by the bones of beasts. She even saw Rajela. It turns out Blackfoot had used hypnosis to cloud Rupa's mind. "Ananta, you stop it too." Ananta was still furious. "She provoked me like that, and you still want me to stop?" Blackfoot continued the hypnosis. "We've reached this point, and you're still planning to push further." He huffed. Then suddenly his eyes widened, and he pushed Blackfoot aside. A giant serpent with a terrifyingly large mouth lunged toward him and Ruba. The serpent struck its body coiling around the tree. Ao, with a worried expression, screamed, "Ruba!" Then turned to command the soldiers, "Call 10 people over here." Quick chase after them. A swarm of beasts charged toward them. Nadia's branches erupted from the ground, piercing through them. She gripped the branches tightly in her hands. She shouted, "Everyone get ready to fight! The whole swarm is heading this way!" Ananta covered Rupa's mouth, hiding behind the tree to evade the serpent's pursuit. He whispered to her to keep her mouth shut, flashing back to when they were both swallowed by the giant serpent. He had placed an unconscious Rupa inside the snake's belly. As for him, he used his massive arm to punch a hole through its body and fly out. The serpent's eyes rolled back in pain, and it roared before collapsing to the ground. He picked Rupa up and laid her down. A moment later, she woke up. He was leaning against a nearby tree and asked, "Oh, you're finally awake." "You're lucky," he added. She still didn't understand what had happened and snapped at him. "What is that attitude of yours?" She looked down at her chest and suddenly realized that during the fight her shirt had been torn. Blushing in embarrassment, she covered her chest with her hands. He explained so she would understand. "Did you forget you were swallowed by that snake, and right now we're trying to find a way out?" Her expression softened and her gaze wavered. "This guy, did he really protect me?" Ananta raised his hand, looking at it thoughtfully. "Regenerating energy is too slow. It's going to take a while before I can move properly again." He said to her, "It's a bit polluted here, isn't it?" "Well, it makes sense. We're close to the digestive acid." Rupa stood up, frantic. "We've already been swallowed, and you're still acting so calm." "How much time has passed, my teammates?" Ananta's gaze flicked behind him. Suddenly, he pulled Rupa down to sit right next to him. Caught off guard, she asked in confusion, "What's wrong?" "What are you doing?" He covered her mouth with his hand. "Quiet!" Ananta looked around. Giant serpents were everywhere, hunting for them. They were completely surrounded. Is this the snake's territory? More importantly, why do I feel so sick? Are they demons, gods, or what? Rupa pulled Ananta's hand away from her mouth and whispered, "Are you planning on fighting them?" Still carefully observing the serpents, he replied, "Not the way you think. I can't fully control the curse right now. Without Blackfoot, if I go all out, I'll easily succumb to mindless rage, but I'm not about to let them eat me. There are 2 ways now. 1, take the hits and face them head on. 2, try to avoid combat and return to the Alliance. You decide." Rupa immediately interrupted, "What about a 3rd way, break through the encirclement to follow the route? Once we leave the forest, just by sniffing I can tell there are countless snakes tracking our scent. If we rush out now, we'll be cornered immediately, even if we reach the reinforcements. That would just lead to pointless losses." Hearing this, he asked her if she had a more feasible plan. Her face flushed slightly, and she sounded reluctant. "I don't like this at all, but get on my back." She knelt so he could climb on. He didn't understand what she was planning and just stood there, stunned. What are you doing?" She was too lazy to explain. "Don't ask questions, just do it." Her eyes glowed bright red like a predator ready to hunt. "Hold on tight, don't fall." She transformed into a wolf, carrying him on her back and sprinting at an incredible speed. The serpents sensed the movement and roared. She darted past one, biting into its body and tearing it in 2. Blood splattered everywhere, but she kept sprinting forward. The serpents pursued them closely. Ananta yelled, "We're about to shake them off." Rupa also shouted, "We're almost out of the forest." Just a little more. She thought about her teammates fighting. At least this way they would be a little safer. Just as they thought they were out of the forest, she suddenly realized something was ahead. Wait, there's someone there. His pupils dilated. He stared at the image on the old man's shirt. Up ahead was an old man wearing glasses. His right eye looked as venomous as a snake's. He was reading a book sitting cross-legged on top of a giant serpent. My apologies, but no one is allowed to leave this place. Get them, he said. A pack of serpents emerged from the ground, jaws wide open, aimed at Ananta and Rupa. Ananta broke into a sweat, his face filled with anxiety. Too fast. Can we dodge this? Suddenly, Rupa grabbed his arm and threw him away. She was bitten by the serpents and cried out in pain. Ananta quickly lunged in, punching the snakes. Rupa turned back into her human form. Her face was pale and her voice was weak. Well, I guess you owe me one now. After saying that, she collapsed unconscious. Ananta reached out to catch her. The old man closed his book, his tone mocking. Trying to protect your companion, it's useless. Ananta was consumed by rage. His power surged out. Holding Rupa in his arms, he gritted his teeth and said, Do you want to be beaten to death? The general-class serpent roared in terror. On this side, Ao had drawn his blade stance ready. As soon as the serpent lunged, Ao stabbed his sword straight through its chest. With a single strike, the general-class monster collapsed, its soul sent to the afterlife. Even though he had finished off the monster, Ao didn't show any joy. Instead, he looked worried. Just then, Nadia walked over with her staff. Looking at the monster on the ground, she finally let out a sigh of relief. It seemed their side hadn't suffered significant casualties. Ao, standing behind with a scowl like he'd just run into an ex, walked up to call Nadia. Ananta felt that something about this situation was not right. Look at the way they were attacking. It seems these monsters aren't actually targeting them. If anything, they look like they're trying to escape a predator. Ananta is haunted by that horrific scene from before. It reminds Ananta of the giant serpent that swallowed 2 people earlier. Just as the atmosphere grows tense, breakfast suddenly appears out of nowhere. She stomps over to them, raising her voice to snap at them, telling them to stop chatting. They both freeze for a few seconds as if they had all the free time in the world to be just chatting. She's the one who really needs to get a grip. I was being way too nice. If they were dealing with me, they'd be getting an earful right now. She insists their priority now is to find Ananta as soon as possible before everything descends into a chaos that even she can't resolve. Elsewhere in the dead of night, something streaks rapidly toward the ground. Looking closer, it's Ananta carrying Rupa. Both of them are severely injured. With a weak, ragged breath, Rupa tells Ananta that it's useless to keep trying. This is an extremely potent toxin from her avatar, a voice echoes from somewhere. Even evil spirits would perish in an instant if they touched it without immediate treatment. The avatar will die, it continues. Looking off into the distance, there's an old man, just standing there looming. And to top it off, he's got this ridiculously long white hair draping over his head. Talk about a total fashion disaster. Honestly, it's an eyesore. He's even got his eyes covered for style. Plus that massive dark serpent behind his back. Talk about a lethal combo. Calling him a monster might be a bit harsh, but seeing him like that, even demons would be terrified. Forget demons, you'd think with that edgy, intimidating entrance he'd have everyone trembling. But he's been waiting for ages and there's still no reaction from Ananta's side. That's gotta be pretty embarrassing for him. Ananta sets Rupa down, promising he'll be back after he skins that old geezer alive. Rupa looks at Ananta's retreating figure with panicked eyes, screaming, "Don't!" But it's hopeless. He marches straight toward the old man. He transforms into his powerful 10,000 shard lizard form, radiating a murderous aura as he prepares to clash with the geezer. Ananta reassures Rupa that he will finish off that old demon. He's going to get her to breakfast. The old man, watching from afar, mutters to himself, "That savage nature is deep in his bones. He must be the one mentioned in the report. Biharan." Then he steps forward, spreading his arms to summon his divine beast, blathering on about how his name is Azing, the avatar of, well, something or other. With that, the dark serpents lunged one after another at the lizard spirit. But a second later, shards of the dark serpents were sent flying everywhere. All that remained was the lizard's sheer rage. The silver-haired old man just stood there calmly watching its every move. Just as it went for an attack, the old man's true serpent form revealed itself, but the lizard was way too fast. It managed to wound a part of the serpent's tail. It seized the chance to charge at him, thinking it could take him down. But it clearly hasn't heard that the older the ginger, the spicier it gets. Even I could spot a flaw in the old man's tactics. Meanwhile, Ananta. The so-called Super Vav IP Pro lizard got trapped in the old man's web. Just an inch away from touching him, he was instantly restrained by the dark serpents. The silver-haired man laughed triumphantly. Heh, heh, heh. Speed, strength, precision, it's all perfect, but it's still not enough to fight me. This old man's narcissism is perfectly proportional to his age. I've seen plenty of good-looking people who are full of themselves. But a guy with a head of white hair acting like that? That's a first for me. Rupa tries to crawl toward the ongoing battle. She only makes it a few steps before a figure blocks her path. It's Lagerta. Rupa asks, "Why risk your life fighting for someone else?" Lagerta smiles and replies, "Teammates are people we can trust and entrust our lives to at any moment. Besides, if it were Rupa, I'd be ready to trade my life for yours, too." Hearing that, Rupa feels a pang of heartache. She blames herself for being so useless and begs Lagerta to promise to come back safe and sound. But in this situation, Lagerta can't exactly grant Rupa's wish. "I'm afraid I can't keep that promise to you this time, Rupa." As the battle unfolds, Ising raises his hand to strike, but in an instant his arm is gone. He stares in shock. His claw was simply severed and fell to the ground, next to that ferocious wolf. It's burning with battle fire right now. Meanwhile, the blue dragon over there is still lost, not understanding what's happening. It couldn't see a thing what is actually going on. But that doesn't matter anymore. The only thing that matters is the battle right in front of them. It's too late. It's already too late. A dark shadow lunges, using evil blood to tear at it from every angle. Its body is nothing but wounds and blood splattered everywhere. That wolf puffs its chest out, acting arrogant. That's the privilege of the strong that the losers can't achieve. The defeated one lets out pathetic wails. Seeing that Ananta chimes in with a jab, "Go ahead, howl like the monster you are." It really was the corpse of the second merchant, its body broken and its spirit tormented. That Asen tried to roar, but the result was nothing more than a pathetic meow. A valiant effort, but ultimately futile. Even Miss Taylor, the branch of the world, was shattered in the dark night as the silver-haired old man sat atop the creature. Riding high into the sky, the old man, covered in blood, looked like he'd taken quite a hit. His eyes filled with deep, self-reproachful contemplation, the true form of a conqueror. The mission to repel the intruders this time has failed. It's a pitiful sight, but he deserves it. Who told him to be so arrogant in his old age, playing with some kind of supernatural power? The blue dragon had returned fiercer than before, and it loudly mocked the monster. "Where did that aggressive attitude of yours go? Looks like all that talk about killing me was just empty threats, lizard." Meanwhile, a storm of chaotic thoughts raced through its mind. This was all wrong. It could no longer control the curse. To let the curse consume its malice was no different than suicide. If it couldn't fully subjugate the enemy, the power of the curse would swallow everything. It looked toward Rupa in pain. If it didn't want Rupa to interfere, it had to find some other way. The name Ta Huit Kam was called out, and all that remained was the night and the color of blood. Lagertha had made her move. The rest was up to Ananta. With those words, Lagertha's body hit the ground. Everything now depended on Ananta. Ananta roared in a frenzy, power surging through every fiber of his being as if he wanted to swallow the inextinguishable flame. But even that wasn't enough. Ananta looked up at the old man. That guy was floating high in the sky, shouting. The sheer power from him shook the entire horizon. He had to become stronger. This had to end. And that guy hovering up there needs to die. Ananta built up momentum to fly into the fray, swearing to devour everything. Below, Rupa lay motionless, exhausted, while high above his eyes remained fixed on that old man. Ananta's eyes were filled with hatred. He remembered Lagertha's words, "The rest is up to you." That only fueled the fire burning within him. The scene shifted to the forest where two guards stood watch while the others huddled together. It seemed something had happened. Rupa slowly opened her eyes to the blurry sight of Nadia. Seeing her wake up, everyone was overjoyed, but Rupa looked around in confusion. She asked where they were and tried to sit up, but her whole body ached. Nadia worriedly told her she was still injured. "Don't push yourself. If we had delayed the antidote even a little longer, you wouldn't have made it. Luckily, Ananta brought you back in time, otherwise it would have been a disaster." Hearing this, Rupa panicked and blurted out, "How is that idiot doing?" Nadia, sitting nearby, was startled. They really are a pair of troublemakers. Before anyone could answer, Ananta's voice boomed in. Instead of showing gratitude to her savior, she called him an idiot. Ao, standing in the back, took the chance to tease them both. "Are you two bickering again?" Rupa frowned, looking at Ananta. "What about your body?" Ananta coldly retorted, "Don't worry about me, worry about yourself first. Just stay put. Stop thinking about stupid things. I don't want to owe you any more favors." Goodness, he's so bossy, but I actually kind of like it. After that, Rupa was speechless. What else could she say? The man was half dead and still couldn't say a nice word. So frustrating, Nadia sitting nearby tried to open her mouth. But before she could finish, Rupa snapped at her, calling her a fool, and she went silent too. They really are a perfect match, both as sharp-tongued as each other. Ao turned to the others. If Rupa rests for a while, she'll recover soon. Her recovery rate is no joke. He bowed and sincerely thanked Ananta, expressing the team's gratitude. Ananta just let out a grunt. He fell silent. Nadia asked, "Did you fight someone following Juyo's orders?" Ananta frowned and replied in frustration, "It was an old man named Asen. He has the power to summon snakes from his own shadow, but they're just mindless clones, so they can only perform simple actions." He remembered the scene from earlier. There were no corpses around. It seemed they wanted to drive the intruders away rather than take their lives. Ananta speculated that they might have been capturing those trying to reach Pasa territory, and it seemed they had received orders to return to their master immediately. Nadia still couldn't understand. Why would they do that? Ananta shook his head, looking down. He didn't know either. But I can clearly feel that his branch has started to take root in my body. Blackfoot chimed in with a smile. That's right. Lately, Ananta's curse has been noticeably stable. Just one bottle of the divine coconut grass medicine worked wonders. As she said that, she leaned in close to hug Ananta. The look on Ananta's face was priceless. Seriously, what is she doing? She even teased Ananta, asking what he'd become if he absorbed that entire tree branch. Who knows what he'd turn into. Nadia here is like, "Are you seriously having fun with this?" Looking at that face, I'm pretty sure she is. "Whatever he turns into, he's never going to be your husband, okay?" The stench of a green tea beach was so thick it was making Ananta sick, so he shoved her aside. "I haven't said it yet, but I'm already a married man, so get lost, and what even is that look?" The sixth position in the Sephira is the embodiment of naivety. The mere mention of the Sephira makes the protagonist wonder what they are. According to Ananta, the Sephira are the elite chosen to protect the incarnation of the wings. It's a title for the 10 strongest beings granted power by the tree, and the top warriors, known as the 5 disciples, are responsible for keeping an eye on the rest. Asen showing up proves that among Julio's 5 disciples, someone powerful will appear. The strength of a high-ranking disciple in the Sephira is described as being able to cause shock waves with just a slight movement. Asen seems to be returning to his hideout, standing face-to-face with someone. The other guy snapped at him. "You look no different from a pathetic animal. Don't you have any shame left?" Asen replied in a low voice, "It seems I can't escape you after all." "The incarnation of conquest." The other guy asked, "What is your mission?" Asen broke into a cold sweat and replied that his mission is to keep anyone from setting foot in the Pasa lands and to eliminate anyone who tries to stop him. Then there's the second, Sephira Gahan, the incarnation of domination. Honestly, he looked pretty cool and arrogant while fighting earlier. But now, in front of Gahan, he's curled up as obedient as a puppy. Well, that makes sense. If he acted cocky now, he'd be sent to the afterlife in one hit. After listening to the old man's report, Gahan's face tightened. He told the old man to lead the way so he could go deal with them properly. With that, the two turned and left. Just a few steps in, 2 strangers appeared before them. One guy reached out to block Gahan, telling the incarnation of domination not to act recklessly. Gahan gave him a death glare. He scoffed with utter contempt. "You're telling me to stand still. Do you know who my dad is?" Truly a bunch of low-class trash. The 2 leaders locked eyes, intensity radiating, like if one guy dared to jump, the other would collide with him instantly. The most powerful one, seeing the dispute, chimed in with a sarcastic tone. "Gahan, you look pretty energetic, don't you? Listen to a request of mine first." At that, everyone bowed down, ready to receive orders. "Ready to receive orders, incarnation of the wings." Even the arrogant Gahan wasn't acting cocky anymore. He also clasped his hands and bowed, muttering that it's hard to disobey him now. The incarnation of the wings. It's rare to see Gahan acting this obedient. I thought he was so tough. Who knew that in front of the incarnation of the wings, he'd barely dare to breathe, just like some half-baked wannabe player. In the end, it was all just for show. Julio revealed there is news about the Queen from a spy in Levitan. They are organizing an expeditionary force toward the Pasa lands. Gahan started mumbling, doubting his life. Is that truly her goal? Julio isn't sure either. He guesses she wants to follow the old trails he left behind. He even started channeling his inner life coach, adding some profound wisdom, a futile effort to exploit that flawed creation from the tree to seize the other branches. Asen bowed and pleaded, "Please, Lord Julio, give this mission to me. I will personally wipe out those pathetic humans. This is the first time I've seen someone so eager to be a slave to capitalism unconditionally." The other guy frowned and asked Asen if he remembered Bangyak. He looked confused and asked, "You mean the one who was in the 10th position of the origin?" "Exactly. That's him. A human cursed by the black dragon Ajihaka, and the one who defeated Bangyak is currently in Leviton. He's a formidable character who once faced him and the incarnation of the wings yet managed to survive. Appearing beside the incarnation of Conquest now to issue a warning that's actually pretty smart." Gehan asked for the guy's name out of curiosity. But that curious face looks a bit twisted. Looks like he's about to pull the domineering CEO script. This guy is interesting. The answer didn't miss a beat, Ananta. Asen's heart was full of hidden concerns. Speaking of Gehan, he is the incarnation of domination and the strongest spear, while Biharon is the firmest shield. They are a pair like no other, no wonder. Being one of the supreme powers of the Sephira, and also the most formidable rivals since this guy has never shown any true loyalty to Lord Julio anyway. But he was given the 4th or 5th position, that alone is saying a lot. But how could Lord Julio entrust this mission to him? But how could Lord Julio even entrust him with this mission? I was lost in my own thoughts when he suddenly called out, "Asen, do you have any idea what this is?" The old man jumped, staring at the item in Gehan's hand, and replied, "That is a tree branch, the very thing that fills the void in the crocodile's heart." Gehan noted that compared to what they have inside them, this is just a pathetic piece of trash, but isn't that even better? With this, they've basically completed the mission Lord Julio entrusted to them. Gehan responded to Asen's words with cold indifference, flicking the branch into a deep pit. Asen exploded in anger. "What do you think you're doing?" Gehan didn't care about his attitude at all. Instead, he laughed heartily and gave the old man a look full of affection, saying, "I already told you. I told you I'd do it, and I meant it. I'll personally conquer them myself." Honestly, birds of a feather flock together. They both love to brag so much. Seriously, they love to talk big. Last episode, old man Asen flexed a bit, got beaten, and ran back crying to his master. Now it's Gehan's turn. This squad is really something everyone just loves to puff out their chests. Autumn leaves fall, and Gehan leaves Asen deep in thought. Gehan chuckled to himself, muttering about the demon king who rules the Bassa lands and his invincible army of evil. Care to guess how it's going to end? Asen is now absolutely terrified by this reckless young man who clearly has more guts than brains. He's so scared he's practically wetting himself, stuttering and unable to get a single clear sentence out. Meanwhile, Gehan is holding something, staring at it thoughtfully. It hasn't even been that long, and he's already got a new toy to play with. The strongest spear and the incarnation of the wings, huh? If he can survive a fight against them, that would truly be something to see. The cold-hearted CEO Gehan makes up his mind. He will definitely prepare an arena worthy of Ananta. Not that our protagonist can hear him, of course, but Gehan's heart is set on him, whispering, "You better get here soon, okay?" A week passes. Everyone is standing in front of their new base. The preparations are finally complete. Lagerta and her guards step out from inside. Roth cheerily welcomes Lagerta, saying he thought he'd be waiting until he died. Lagerta happily approaches the group. "It's so good to see the vanguard is still safe and sound. And Ananta, Nadia, you two did well too." But it seems neither of them is very happy. Then Lagerta turns around and asks Skane and Mo, "I assume there's no one else left behind, right?" Mo looks up and replies that all 50 of the Queen's royal guards and the defense force are present and accounted for. Ananta speaks up, "Lagerta, how does it feel, stepping onto your homeland? A land that has been so thoroughly devastated, how does that make you feel?" Lagerta's smile vanishes. She silently turns and looks out into the distance. "Honestly, Ananta, you really should have just kept your mouth shut. You just had to open your trap and kill the mood." Lagerta was just about to speak from the heart when Blackfoot interrupted. "According to the report sent earlier, you must already be aware of the situation. A week ago, a beam of light appeared from the direction of the royal capital. That's likely a sign that another source of the tree branch's power has emerged. The revelation of Sephora's 6th piece combined with the emergence of the branch's power, it's as if someone has been planning all of this. Given the current situation, things have spiraled way beyond our initial predictions. Even if you wanted to use my power for an emergency, it would take at least 3 days to arrive. Knowing that, do you still want to proceed?" Lagerta falls into deep thought again before raising her voice. "My brothers and sisters, This is the home where we were born and raised, but it was all stolen away by the incarnation of the wings. We were forced to leave years ago. I swore to the comrades who died back then. For the people who have always had to live in pain and loss in this ruined country one day, I will return to restore Valkyria for them. When that time comes, I will shout loudly to the spirits of our fallen countrymen that their sacrifices were not in vain. It is thanks to their sweat and tears that we have come this far. Her voice grows louder and more resonant. My brave, indomitable countrymen, please stand with me and fight to the very end. Everyone shouts in unison. Long live the Queen. The sight before us is truly moving. Even Ananta's face shows clear determination. The order is given. All troops advance to the capital. Let's charge. The expedition's route begins following the map they shared earlier, exactly as the plan was laid out. Night falls. At the campsite, Blackfoot is chatting with Whitefoot. Noting that the order has come down, those who aren't participating in the battle must wait here orderly. Hearing that, Blackfoot's face instantly sours. Even if she isn't fighting, she wants to stand on the sidelines and watch Ananta battle. Sitting around like this is no different from being a watchdog. Oh, for heaven's sake. That's just ridiculous. A crush is one thing, but this is too much. If you go out there while they're fighting, you'd just be another burden to carry, like you're carrying a ton of bricks on your back. Whitefoot, standing next to her, catches her drift and teases, "Oh, so it turns out there's someone who can't join the fight." The expedition didn't go well, and honestly, I think she's only this upset because she couldn't meet Ananta. If he were here, she'd probably forget all about the expedition. White understands her sister's heart, so she's comforting her. Ananta's rage levels have stabilized a bit now anyway. You don't have to worry, and you won't need to go to the front lines anymore, regardless of how this expedition turns out. Your powers are still everyone's lifeline, and our queen needs absolute protection. Or rather, it's not just protection, it's surveillance. Look at how they protect us. It seems we still haven't earned much of their trust. Blackfoot still doesn't understand how her sister can be so certain about that, even though they haven't done anything to the two of them, and regardless of whether the Queen's expedition succeeds or fails, it remains a mystery. Blackfoot just offered a deep, knowing smile, explaining that the outcome of this expedition has nothing to do with them. It doesn't matter. The real focus is on Ananta. She wants Ananta to become stronger even if it means destroying everything in her path. What a calculating girl. Looking at her, no one would think her mind could be that toxic. Truly, the more beautiful a woman is, the more dangerous she can be. From a distance of 1 meter, an arrow was flying at the speed of light toward the black serpent. Boom! The arrow pierced its head, and it let out a pained shriek. Then Mo and her team took turns clearing out those ruthless black serpents. But they just kept appearing in greater numbers, all heading toward their army. Lagertha screamed, commanding everyone to keep pushing forward. The enemy is concentrating their attack on the right flank. All troops gather and form a giant shield wall to hold those serpents back. Ananta saw that the situation was becoming critical, so she called out, "Ruby, wipe them all out!" Receiving the order, the little lizard jumped in front of the shield wall, opened its mouth, and unleashed a torrent of scorching fire, as if to incinerate everything. Ananta watched the situation from behind, and for a moment, she thought that perhaps she didn't necessarily need to get involved. On Nadia's side, she was also fighting fiercely. Any black serpent that lunged at her was skewered by her and the tree roots. Successfully leading the army to break through the enemy's encirclement, this was a desperate gamble. One small slip-up and the entire feta would be wiped out. Looking at the female generals fighting, Ananta wondered if they were truly capable of holding their own. Even for men, this battle formation would be extremely difficult. And these are women embodiments of naivety according to intelligence. They're facing an army that has trained countless times. There is no way they can win. But our troops have reached the very borders of Pasa's heart. So why haven't the Alicon army or the evil creatures appeared yet? Suddenly Mo shouted, making Lagertha jump. She reported that they were about to reach the V-Grid surveillance tower. Greeting Lagertha's army was none other than the old man Asen. He wore a savage grin as he looked down. "Welcome you who dare to reject the incarnation of the wings. Let me watch and see how miserable your ending will be." With that, he caught Sky's ambush arrow in a flash, but Sky didn't think he would continue the assassination now. It wasn't the time to discuss the ending yet. The old man's face hardened, showing clear determination. "Very soon, you will witness the wrath of an old man," saying that he summoned his true form, and it was carrying something with it. It looked absolutely terrifying. Even Lagertha turned pale when she saw it. Sensing the danger, she quickly ordered everyone to hold their defensive formation. Immediately after, Asin dropped that thing into the middle of Lagertha's army. Once it hit the ground, the slime began to wiggle and rise, forming barbaric alicons, and their mouths wouldn't stop mumbling something. And it wasn't even human language. How on earth is anyone supposed to understand that? Lagertha panicked and quickly ordered a retreat to save lives. That alicon was gradually morphing into the slime, quickly overtaking Lagertha's troops. On this side, they were struggling to fight, warning everyone not to touch them. That slime was churning and rolling together. The first horn formed, piercing the sky. Stacked on top were horrific devil eyes, followed by a head that could only be described as hideously ugly, with 4 layers of jagged, protruding teeth. No matter how you look at it, you just can't appreciate that kind of beauty. Plus, it had a long, slimy tongue as a bonus. The lower half of its body was also starting to take shape, spraying slime everywhere toward Lagertha's army. Above, Asin told himself, "This old man will no longer underestimate you." Then he ordered the alicon to attack, show them what true overwhelming power is. As soon as he finished, it lunged like a moth to a flame. Right away, it clashed with Little Ruby, plus a physical combo from Arupa's Rage Serpent also rushing in with a dark blade. Facing the barrage of attacks, the Alicon and Asin struggled a bit. Then El joined in. "Don't worry, Alicon, in the name of our allies, I will finish you myself." Ananta shouted with fury, her eyes glowing red as if she wanted to swallow the Alicon standing before her. But the Alicon wasn't easy to defeat. It raised its head high. It thrust its long, twisted horn toward the sky, creating a mysterious dark circle. Every step they took felt like tremors, making the surrounding air become tense to the extreme. Then it threw what it had just created toward Ananta, and in an instant, Ananta's silhouette was gradually swallowed by it. Rupa watched the scene unfolding before her and couldn't help but scream Ananta's name. A few seconds later, Ananta's shadow touched the ground and syrup sprayed everywhere. This time, Rupa couldn't hold back anymore. She spun around as a natural reflex, still hurling insults at him, calling him a cruel monster, her demeanor more vicious than ever before. It was as if she wanted to take revenge for all the pain that Ananta had caused, suddenly from that Alicon creature. A dark, tentacle-like shapes began to emerge, moving with fluid, twisted agility, dancing around with rows of razor-sharp teeth. This being was absolutely grotesque. It was so terrifying that even demons would be jealous of its horror. All those tentacles turned toward Rupa, forcing her to stop in her tracks with a sense of dread. Before she could even let out a scream, Ao suddenly flew in from behind with immense power, fiercely jumping into the fight and continuing to show off his agile combat skills. He drove the tentacles back, forcing them into a defensive position. Seeing the situation, Rupa gathered her momentum and lunged forward, her eyes no longer showing a trace of humanity. Her mouth didn't stop screaming vicious commands at them, ordering them to die. From out of nowhere, a strange blue object appeared. It suddenly flew toward where they were clashing. Luckily, Ao spotted it in time and blocked it, but the force of the object was so immense that both were sent flying and crashed to the ground. Seemingly injured, the impact made the air feel heavier and more tense than ever. Asin, that vile old man, stood high atop the tower. He spat curses at Lagertha's group. "You wretches who stole my right arm," he roared. "I will personally crush you into pieces." With that, the eyes of the familiar on his shoulder began to glow, and he opened his mouth to release those blue objects toward Lagertha's group fighting below the hill. Chaos spread. A sense of fear and tension filled the air as the objects rained down like a merciless attack. Ao watched the scene unfolding before him. Sweat poured down his forehead as he realized that everything had become much more complicated. And before he could regain his composure, the blue object struck his position again. Luckily, Rupa reacted quickly, saving Ao from danger just in time and bringing him to safety, while the two of them were under the barrage of the old man's familiar. Asin was hit by an arrow shot by Scan, forcing it to dodge, but it couldn't avoid having its wing pierced by her arrow. Old Asin couldn't believe his eyes when he saw this. Scan continued to summon her power, speaking to the spirit of the wind. "Free and unrestrained, grant me the power of the wind to tear those enemies apart." A young girl with the demeanor of a heroic warrior. She drew her bow, aiming at old Asin with a majestic presence, inspiring the spirits of the warriors nearby. She directed teams 3 and 4 to go and support the commanders while the entire army launched a fierce assault. Everyone was burning with intensity, ready to charge into battle. After merging, Asin became even more terrifying. His eyes flashed with a fearsome light as he looked toward Ao's army and let out a mocking laugh. "It is useless, you pathetic humans." Rupa, angered, jumped up to stand right beside him and taunted, "You still dare to talk, you fool? Where is your right arm now?" Old Asen could not respond, only able to spew curses to vent his anger. The situation became tenser than ever. Ao leaped up, raised his sword, and charged into the fray. Combining with Rupa's support, the fierce sword strike just unleashed pierced through the old man's body. After only a few minutes, the battle was decided, even though Ao's sword was broken. But that Asen fellow had fallen. Ao, seeing the man had not suffered enough, invited Rupa to poke fun at him a few more times. Rupa turned her face toward the battlefield. It seemed something had happened to Ananta. Below, the warriors were still fiercely engaging with old Asen's familiar. The situation with Ananta did not look good. He was lying motionless on the ground. Beside him, Nadia was terrified and pale. Ananta was currently severely injured and needed urgent medical attention. Nadia kept calling for Ananta to wake up, but it was all in vain. He couldn't even move on the other side. The battle between Lagertha and Alicon had not yet reached its conclusion. After its last attack, Lagertha stepped back behind her shield to recover her strength. The soldiers also moved forward to protect her. But with a single swipe, Alicon sent the soldiers flying everywhere. While it wasn't paying attention, Lagertha ambushed it from afar, putting her strength into a horizontal slash at its neck, too fast, too dangerous. Until its head was nearly severed, it still didn't know what was happening. Afterward, Lagertha ordered Nadia to quickly heal Ananta because to win this battle, they needed his strength. Lagertha raised her sword high, all her power concentrating. In other words, it was Fragarach, the legendary sword from Irish mythology. Often used by the hero Luke, Lagertha took a stance, leaped into the air, and slashed straight down at the head of the Alicon. The collision exploded, and everything around it seemed to be scorched. After the smoke cleared, only a skeletal Alicon remained. Lagertha walked up to it and said a few words, "How regrettable, Alicon," as she recalled the handsome appearance he used to have. The silhouette she once admired was now gone. What she saw now was just a dry skeleton. "How could you have become so ugly like this?" Lagertha lifted her sword once more and spoke her final words to Alicon. "At least let me myself send you on your way," when suddenly before her eyes, in that crucial moment, Alicon called her name, Princess Lagertha. The two words echoed across the sky. The atmosphere grew eerie and tense as all eyes turned toward the towering castle. Where danger might be lurking, Scan worried that it would be dangerous and hoped Lagertha could come down to join them. The atmosphere was tense when suddenly a voice spoke from nowhere. "Ha ha! Scan, you're still as cowardly as ever, aren't you?" The two turned around and were startled. It was the silhouette of the Alicon from before. He spoke up, asking, "Why are you climbing to such a dangerous place like that?" Lagertha proudly replied, "You are worrying for nothing, Alicon, because I am already a person above all others. Why would I fear heights anymore?" This scene looked so familiar. It had appeared once before. Back then, the two of them were still carefree children. While playing, she had climbed to a high place like that, and Alicon had always been by her side to protect her. Alicon back then had promised he would always be by her side, and protect her so that she could become a legendary queen. But looking back at the cruel reality in front of her, he was nothing more than a dry skeleton. The corpse kept calling her Princess Lagertha. In an instant, the sword in Lagertha's hand lowered. Her heart softened. It seemed the shadow of the past was so great that she could never forget it. Alicon's consciousness suddenly seemed to awaken. He lifted his two hands and asked himself, "Is this my current form?" Even he did not recognize himself. Lagertha, in a moment of weakness, thought, "Has Alicon regained his consciousness? He can still recognize me." While his mind was gradually recovering, a voice kept echoing in Alicon's head, "Wake up!" The scene of death appeared again. This was the massacre created by Julio before, back when he invaded this place. Anyone who stood in their way was sent to the afterlife without a shred of mercy. At that point, Alicon was completely exhausted after such a brutal, relentless battle. What's more, Juyo had taken something from him, something he considered his second life. Everything turned into chaos. Lagertha and her warriors fought a battle to the death, but it was all in vain. Juyo successfully seized their territory. Suddenly, Alicon's body stirred. Lagertha let her guard down for a split second, and just like that, Alicon merged with the demon controlled by Juyo. It seized control of his consciousness. Tentacles sprouted, attacking everyone nearby. Even Nadia and Lagertha were ensnared. It was like a man-eating monster. Even little Ruby looked terrified. Its target slowly shifted toward Ruby. The little lizard, sensing the danger, braced itself for an attack. Nadia and Lagertha had been knocked to the ground. Nadia, worried, urged Lagertha, "Your Majesty, if this continues, the casualties will just keep mounting." She urged Lagertha to retreat quickly and tend to the wounded, but Nadia wasn't getting through. Lagerta roared that the battle must go on. It must continue. She just lost control for a moment back there. As for Alison, he had reached his limit. Lagerta stood tall, raised her sword, and signaled to Nadia that it was time to join forces. "Deal him a fatal blow!" she shouted to the others to clear the way. At that moment, Ananta emerged wreathed in flames. He warned that Alison, "If you don't want to be reduced to ashes, get out of the way." Lagerta stared at Ananta stunned. He now possessed the fire spirit with protection abilities like those of a fairy. Ananta took step after step toward Alicon. Alicon hissed a few times to intimidate him, but it was useless. As if Ananta would be scared by a few mosquito-like noises. I mean, it was a little scary, but barely. Ananta raised his hands, conjured a massive fireball, and hurled it at Alicon. The monster didn't give in easily. It created a black hole to clash with Ananta's attack. The two orbs collided, creating a massive explosion, and then the two beasts lunged at each other like moths to a flame. Ananta started things off with a legendary kick. He mocked Alicon. Even though they were both victims of that winged bastard Juyo, Alicon was just a coward hiding in fear. Ananta cursed him while landing crushing blows, telling him to stop clinging to this life. Just accept your fate. Meanwhile, Alicon had nothing left in him. He muttered Ananta's words to himself. Why cling to life? What was it all for? He didn't even understand what he was doing himself. Nadia, meanwhile, Betty was using her power to bind Alicon's body. At that moment, Alicon seemed to let go of everything. A pillar of light erupted from the sky. A shockwave of power radiated from it. It was Lagerta summoning the light. She raised her sword high and recited the oath, "In the name of Queen Lagerta and Henza of Vancaria, rest in peace, my friend." With that, the light struck Alicon directly. The brilliant glow descended, taking his soul, and everything vanished into nothingness. He remembered the past seeing that beautiful light before. It was when he was with Elle watching the sunset. He had sworn to himself he would always be by Elle's side, but that was just his past full of love, because in reality life didn't miss a chance to beat him down. Alicon's silhouette faded away. Lagerta stood stunned, filled with regret, but, oh well. If he was a good man, he wouldn't have died. It's not that he was heartless. It's just that Juyo was too cruel. In those final moments, Lagerta couldn't hold back her tears. Ananta finally snapped back to reality, not understanding what had just happened. What was that burst of power just now? It was like Ruby had done something. Lagerta stood there, unable to suppress her sorrow, collapsing to her knees. It was to be expected. After all, he was her childhood sweetheart, the one who was once ready to lay down his life for her. Nadia stepped forward, urging Lagerta not to grieve, but it meant nothing. Lagerta felt that mourning the dead was the right thing to do. It wasn't hard to do, but Nadia disagreed, because behind her were soldiers still fighting. One wrong step would cost them all their lives. Let's keep fighting so their deaths aren't in vain. A roar echoed across the space. It was Ruba punishing that wicked old man, Asin. Her roar carried the resentment of the soldiers fighting and falling because of him and all the innocent people who had perished. So he shouldn't expect to die a peaceful death. Even after all that bastard Asin was still acting arrogant, it was truly hateful. That look on his face only provoked Ruba's anger even more. Honestly, she was still remarkably calm. If it were me, that old man would have been turned to dust a long time ago. The old man looked at Rupa with a sinister grin, claiming a trap had been set and was just waiting for her. No sooner had he finished speaking than a beam of light shone down from above. Stepping out from within was Gahang. A rapid report came in. Enemies were approaching from the Royal Road. All eyes instantly turned to him. In the heat of the moment, something came flying at the speed of light, piercing clean through the tower. Then a fist stopped right in front of Gahang. Yes, it was none other than our server's top player, Ananta. He gently placed his steel-like fist against Gahang's cheek, a gentle touch. It was almost enough to shatter the guy's jaw. Ananta remembered the intel earlier mentioning that Julio had a particularly loyal subordinate. High up in the ranks, nobody could have predicted what was happening. Sephiros were the elite carefully hand-picked to protect the embodiment of the wings. That title was reserved for the 10 strongest gifted with power from the World Tree. The top warriors were considered his 5 great disciples, and each position was deeply interconnected. Constantly monitoring each other, Asin's sudden appearance suggested that one of Julio's 5 subordinates might be similar. So the strength of that Gahang guy must be on par with Asin. As for Gahang, after recovering from that fated punch, he put on a haughty voice, still acting cocky and challenging Ananta, threatening to crush him. Talk about nerve. It isn't over till it's over. We don't know who's going to end up in the dust by sunset. We're here to fight, not to talk trash, so pipe down, Ananta thought. Having waited for the bring it on, he lunged forward, letting out a war cry to boost his morale before they collided for the first time. Truly, both were left stunned. Judging by Ananta's eyes, Gahang wasn't a pushover. He even seemed to have extraordinary regenerative abilities. Gahang pulled back his hand, unleashing a mountain piercer on Ananta, followed by a great mountain crusher. But he was dead wrong. It wasn't going to be that easy. Come and get some. Ananta called Ruby from behind. The combo was absolutely legendary. Even from here, you could still feel the heat radiating from him. Strong as he was, he had to follow the proper sequence. First, he opened his mouth and let out a roar to play some psychological games. You might think it's a joke, but this trick worked. Young Gahang was left frozen solid, staring at Ananta. Lagatha also watched Ananta without blinking. His current state was almost surpassing that of a god. Ananta unleashed a torrent of flames at Gahang, leaving him completely paralyzed. There was no room left for tears or sorrow. He hadn't even reached the top yet. He was about to be wiped out. Seeing this, Nadia, standing by, unleashed some skills to help out. In an instant, everything was incinerated, yet Ananta remained standing tall and proud. As for little Gahang, he was left charred and hidden behind a cloud of thick smoke. He roared like a madman, even going so far as to admit that Ananta was a formidable opponent. Seriously, I tip my hat to him. He's about to be deleted, and he's still acting like that. He's delusional enough to think he's on equal footing. After finishing her mission, Ruby was sent back by Ananta to rest. She had worked hard enough. Now began the solo performance of our top pro Ananta. He took steady steps toward the little brat Gahang. Gahang had changed his interface to a new troublemaker mode. He looked like something, all right, but even after that hit nearly wiped his personality away, he still wasn't conceding. "So you're my enemy," he said. He even demanded to fight Ananta until he surrendered. He was pretty confident for someone about to be smashed so hard his own parents wouldn't recognize him. Ananta leaped forward without a second thought. This playground was his. All he had to do was take down the enemy in front of him. The face-off literally began. It started with a spectacular collision followed by a face-slapping session, but just like how a certain number 7 deals with a side chick. Ananta was slightly on the back foot and retreated, his eyes suddenly lighting up. Turns out he realized Gahang was using Mountain Piercer combined with Spirit Flow. He lunged forward like a gust of wind toward Ananta. He was no amateur. Gahang's power couldn't be taken lightly. Just one hit had already caused Ananta significant damage. Then came a high-level escape maneuver from our lizard prince. Attacking left then right, the two danced around like a cat playing with a mouse. Finally, Gahang seized the opportunity to grab Ananta's arm and throw him back. Elle and Nadia watched, their faces tenser than the people actually fighting. Even though Ananta was on the defensive, Elle didn't look down on him at all. On the contrary, he thought Ananta had truly become an immortal being. The curse had granted him endless regenerative energy, coupled with an indomitable spirit that feared no pain. Where Ananta's destructive power came from remained a mystery. That form only further highlighted his fighting spirit and mental strength, so it could be said. A warrior armored from head to toe. How could he fall to a mere curse? He looked at Nadia and signaled that they had to do something to boost Ananta. Nadia understood and pulled a branch from out of nowhere. This might be the best thing she could do right now. Ananta slowly emerged from the debris, maintaining that same confident aura. It was nothing, just a bit dusty. But he was still handsome, no doubt about it. Gahang on the other side was thinking that since the fortress was made of iron, it wouldn't easily crumble. But no matter how solid it is, there's always a weak spot. Suddenly, a voice called out, "Ananta!" It scared the living daylights out of everyone. Thank goodness he didn't have any heart conditions otherwise. He would have passed out right there, and they'd all be doomed. The caller was none other than Rupa. She held Asen like a piece of slime and informed him that everything was safe now. Honestly, in this world, Rupa is probably the only one who dares to call him so brazenly. Then, from the pile of ashes, a wild, raging flame surged up, as if it were pulling Asen toward it. The old man Asen kept screaming for Gahang to save him, but look at what time it was. Even if he screamed his lungs out, it would be useless. I wonder if he's even going to make it out alive. Not only that, but he's expected to save the other guy, too. The energy is intensifying, the cracked tree branch is slowly mending itself, and Ananta's eyes have completely changed in an instant. Even that savage new look of his. But those wiggling, squirming tentacles sprouting out, Ananta arrogantly stands his ground to challenge Ga Hang. After the first round, he was lucky enough to lead 1-0. But in this second round, he might just get logged out for good. Even the surrounding crowd is a bit shocked by his badass new appearance. It seems the power radiating from Ananta is the power of a predator. The pangolin guy looks at Ananta with slight surprise, though it's nothing major, and doesn't forget to flash a mocking smile. Because Ananta has absorbed Asen's power, he uses that same old mountain-piercing move to tumble around with Ananta. In the heat of the moment, Ananta uses his tentacles to block Ga Hang's attack. First he blocks, then he uses his remaining tentacles to move Rupa's group to safety, signaling everyone to evacuate to a more secure spot. Ga Hang is closing in more and more. Next is the second clash between the two young rivals. Ga Hang uses his steel-like body aiming to land a punch on Ananta from above, but Ananta sees right through his intention. He quickly fuses those feelers which shoot up and wrap around the pangolin's limbs. "What are you going to do now that you're tied up?" a voice echoes in his mind. "Why are you letting yourself get distracted? In a fight, never take your eyes off your opponent, not even for a second." The words echo in his mind, making Ga Hang feel suffocated. Realizing his opponent is distracted, Ananta lunges straight at him. Ga Hang tries to react, but it's too little too late. As a result, he takes a direct hit from our guy. In that moment, memories from before come flooding back. It was a beautiful day with blue skies and golden sunshine. The pangolin was out for a stroll when he bumped into a wild boar. He devoured the boar right then and there, arrogantly mocking it for being weak, wondering where he could find a real challenge. A true worthy opponent, that is. Talk about being incredibly arrogant. No sooner had he finished speaking than he met a huge guy. Usually, loudmouthed giants only have a tough exterior and a big mouth. Just all talk and no action. And indeed, as expected, after demanding an explanation and showing off for a bit, the battle began. At first, when testing that guy's strength, our pangolin held back, so he got pushed back. The other guy saw that and thought he had our boy figured out. But oh no, he was still way too wet behind the ears. Out of the swirling mist, the pangolin slowly emerged. The two exchanged friendly glares before the guy revealed his true form, a giant crocodile. Being larger than the pangolin, he relied on his size to threaten him. 3 days later, under Juyo's watchful eye, Ga Hang took the guy down. That crocodile was bragging so loudly at first, well, his mouth is certainly big now, but only because it was swollen from being beaten. It lay motionless on the ground with Ga Hang standing next to it. Even Juyo was a bit surprised by the scene. Even he didn't expect to see what was unfolding before his eyes. He was slightly taken aback because this was the first time someone had taken a tree branch from one of his subordinates, without a single scratch on them. Ga Hang turned and asked if he was the Wings. Juyo confirmed his identity and asked for his name in return. Once the name Ga Hang was spoken, he officially became the one chosen by the heavens. While no one was paying attention, the crocodile woke up. It opened its mouth wide, roaring as it tried to swallow Ga Hang whole, but there's no way the pangolin would be taken down that easily. The crocodile didn't want to play nice, so he just had to push the pangolin over the edge. So a punch was delivered right into its throat, literally punching a massive hole through its jaw. In the final moments, Ga Hang didn't hesitate to offer a few compliments so the guy could happily head off to meet his ancestors. But all joking aside, he really was strong. This was the first time in his life someone made him admit they were a worthy rival, and he would use his own strength to defeat him. That crocodile friend was the only truth the heavens had bestowed upon him since he entered this world, and he would become the pinnacle, the embodiment of dominance. Juyo, watching from above, showed interest in Ga Hang's way of thinking. He said the peak of the world that Ga Hang wants to surpass is standing right in front of him, because he is Juyo, the embodiment of the Wings, the one created by the heavens. Ga Hang looks up at Juyo's high and mighty figure, with great interest swearing that Juyo is the enemy he must defeat at any cost. Juyo up above remains oblivious to Ga Hang's treacherous thoughts and reaches out to cast his spell. The pangolin is enveloped in a strange awakening light. Countless 8-trigram formations appear above forming chains that tighten around him, hoisting him into mid-air. Juyo speaks, advising the pangolin to surrender, to submit to him. If he does, he will be able to witness it alongside him. When the atmospheric layers open according to the call of the heavens, Ga Hang refuses to give in. He is determined not to submit, thinking he hasn't even taken any damage yet, so why should he quit? He wouldn't do something like that. Coldly, Juyo orders the formation to tighten, carving this failure deep into Ga-hang's flesh and blood. Juyo makes that light. Brand the wounds deep into Ga-hang's soul. If he doesn't do that, he will never be able to become a great tree. He even places a curse on the pangolin. His desire to dominate Ga-hang is meant to reach the clouds. Ananta noticed that something was off with Ga-hang. It was the mark from his first battle. The way he dodged to keep his left eye from getting hurt, it was already too obvious. Because of that weakness, I've finally figured out how to take down that overgrown lizard. Outside the fray, everyone's faces were twisted in grim despair as the raging storm tore through everything. Chaos reigned supreme. Gahan swore he'd annihilate Ananta. The physical agony etched deep into his soul screamed in torment, all contained within a body of iron that was immune to every injury. It was his pride and joy. Ananta recognized it instantly, the raw power from his own tree branch, the very ability he'd always felt insecure about. "Once I use this to kill you, I'll finish off those wings of yours for good," Gahan sneered, mocking Ananta for even daring to challenge him. "So you think those wings of yours are that mighty, huh?" Suddenly, Gahan's interface upgraded to a VIP Pro God-tier mode, and he taunted, "Come at me, Ananta! This is your one and only chance to test your strength against the pinnacle of this world." Ananta, still in his short-stack form, shot back a snarky comment to his buddy the lizard. "You think I need you to tell me what to do? Getting a few scratches and you're already losing your cool. If you're going to fight an enemy, shouldn't you be prepared to see your own body torn to shreds? You're nothing more than a stepping stone for me anyway. Listen up, because it's me, Ananta, who's going to take down Juyo." With that, his shadowy snake tentacles lunged forward, but the lizard brushed them aside like they were nothing. But that was fine. That was just the appetizer. "The main course starts right now." Ananta charged in, but he was struck down by the lizard's claws. Yet he didn't give up. Ananta fought with everything he had. But after all that struggling, the lizard swatted him into the dirt. No matter how he attacked, he couldn't pierce that armor. With the situation looking grim, our boy Ananta pulled a new trick out of his sleeve. Poof, and out came a little Quetzalcoatl. Only one of them could be the predator, the conqueror. He'd already defeated countless powerful enemies seen through every dirty trick, and didn't care if others lived or died. And as for you, you consume and hunt your enemies with your own power. Our souls can never merge, so I'll kill you to reach the next level. Quetzalcoatl lunged forward with everything he had, but before he could even touch him, the lizard skewered him through the neck with his claw. The civilians nearby were scrambling to evacuate. The soldiers were worried, and Rupa looked back at Ananta, unable to bear leaving him behind. But under Ao's urging, she had no choice but to follow orders. Seeing everyone finally evacuating, she felt a weight lift off her heart. Now the only thing left was Ananta's battle. Nadia was chanting, fully focused. She could feel the branch embedded in her own body resonating with the branch that Alicon had. These branches held immense power enough to transform anyone, but if they couldn't handle that power, they would lose their minds and be consumed by it. Because of this defect, the branches could barely hold their shape, but Alicon's branch still contained so much power. If she could release it now, at all the remaining energy could forge the ultimate spear, one capable of piercing any armor. With that thought, she swung into action, using her staff to fuse with Alicon's embedded branch. Nadia called out to Alicon, "Lend me your strength, Girso, to protect the ones you love." Andrasta was ready. The light was so blinding that the lizard had to look away. In that 1 second of distraction, Quetzalcoatl grabbed him. The familiar voice echoed in the lizard's mind, "Getting sloppy, aren't you? Even if you lose everything, you have to keep going." Quetzalcoatl gained the upper hand and taunted him. "Even if this body is tortured and ripped to shreds, I still won't die." Meanwhile, Nadia was readying her spectacular spear throw, a move that was honestly totally face-planted into the ground level of bad luck. The arrow somehow managed to skewer Quetzalcoatl's own head. Well, that's it. He's not getting out of this one. Just as he had the upper hand, he was back at rock bottom. The lizard was so shocked he nearly fell over. He laughed at Quetzalcoatl, saying his trump card had just backfired. "It's so hard to find a worthy opponent, and yet you defeat yourself before I even get the chance." Even when reduced to nothing but bones, Quetzalcoatl still struggled to rise and face the lizard. No, it was the power of Alicon finally unleashed. A refined essence began to form. Gahan lay there wheezing in defeat. He'd lost, suffering a fatal wound. Ananta had won. He was losing, yet he kept laughing. Ananta was confused. He didn't see what was so funny. Why was this guy laughing like a lunatic? Dying without achieving your wish. What's so funny about that? Gahan compared him to the glowing embers of a curse that couldn't be extinguished, eventually becoming a massive inferno. And one day, that fire will swallow up even bigger wings. If I were the one holding that curse instead of you, I would have dragged that guy down from heaven. So enjoy your victory while you can. Ananta, bored, asked if he was done with his monologue. Since he asked, Gahan answered by sending him an invitation to hell. He really was the embodiment of vengeance. After devouring a well-cooked lemongrass chili-spiced Gahan, Ananta sat there dazed alongside Aji Dahaka. Seeing you feeling so tired like this, I don't feel happy at all. Instead of comforting him, Aji responded with contempt. You foolish mortal, true gold fears no fire, hardship only strengthens you. Only after you face such difficulties will you be able to become strong. Surely you haven't forgotten the pact they made that day, have you? You coldly denied it, saying nothing has changed. Even the curse is just a tool for you to take your revenge. Once Julio is dead, your own life won't matter anymore. In that case, Aji will simply wait for the day you meet your predicted destruction. The scene shifts to the evening. As soon as you opened your eyes, you encountered someone whose face you couldn't clearly see. Who on earth is this? A strange, warm sensation began to spread throughout your entire body. In the distant camp, Lagertha's lonely figure stood at the center where the bodies of the warriors were neatly arranged on wooden racks, their swords planted in rows in the ground. She ordered her subordinates to light the final fire, sending their comrades off to the afterlife. Amidst the blazing heat that lit up the night, everyone felt a cold, lingering sense of sorrow. Ruba couldn't hold back her tears and sobbed. Nadia turned to look at you not far behind her and walked over to tell you that she could feel it. You have finally understood. You stood there dazed, asking how much time had passed. Half a day had passed since you defeated the enemy. After recovering and treating their wounds, they held a collective funeral for the victims of the battle. And unfortunately, less than half of them survived. It truly was a miracle that any of them made it out of such a brutal battle. If it weren't for your efforts and everyone's sacrifices, they would never have won. Moreover, the curse residing in your body has grown suspiciously stronger. With the power you possess now, no matter how strong the incarnations are, there is no guarantee they can defeat you. You cut Nadia off saying, "That's enough hearing about this." You still had more important things to do. You looked at the lizard crawling toward you. Ruby, I think we have some things to talk about, don't we? The scene shifts to another location. The first seat of Sephiros Levian. The incarnation of the Abyss pushed the door open and entered the room, calling out to Beharan Levian, demanding he explain what exactly had happened. Why was there an emergency summons like this? No sooner had she finished speaking than a giant, massive block of ice fell from the sky, literally. It was the fifth seat of Severus, a boy wearing a polar bear hat on his head. Ur, the incarnation of Frost, had just arrived and immediately shouted, "Levian, I have some bad news for you." He had received news that Gahan had died in battle at the hands of a hateful enemy. This was impossible. The fourth seat of Sephirus had also arrived. That very same enemy had caused so much trouble for Julio. But Julio didn't need to worry. She would protect this place with her life. Kisonga, the incarnation of Wrath, and the third seat of Sephirus, sat in a corner scratching the ground. Kissy, the incarnation of Lightning, was present too. While the group was murmuring, Beharan punched the space in front of him with great force, causing it to shatter into pieces, and inside that space, an eye was watching them. Be quiet, my brothers and sisters, and show the most sincere mourning for the death of our comrade. This sadness seemed to have vanished. It could only be cleansed with blood. I will prepare a requiem to soothe Gahan's soul. Returning to your side, Lupa approached to talk with Nadia, asking if you were all right. Nadia told her to let you and Ruby talk alone. Lupa curiously asked if you had said anything else. Nadia shook her head wearily, remembering your past, how you once knelt before your sister's body and swore that you would certainly return to this place. One day not far from now, please wait for me until then. I will return with Julio's heart and offer it to you. Back in reality, you spoke to Ruby with a nostalgic expression about the day your sister passed away. The death of your sister and the other villagers. You truly wanted to believe it wasn't your fault. If it weren't for Ruby, perhaps you wouldn't have been able to control your own sanity. Since that day, you had buried your heart in hatred for Julio. You always had to suppress your emotions except for the thirst for revenge against him. If it weren't for Ruby, you wouldn't have been able to endure it all. You hated all the incarnations of this world, including Julio. Why was it your sister who died and not you? You had always been searching for the answer to that question. Silent tears rolled down Ruby's face. She trembled as she spoke. Julio Azida Hakado. All of them are the same wielding power according to your desires and standards. Everything is for the sake of revenge against the disgust of those incarnations. You froze in shock, turning your head to look at Ruby. You are also an incarnation, aren't you? Ruby's last line of defense was shattered by your question. She sobbed uncontrollably, constantly apologizing to you, saying she had hidden it until now because she didn't want you to be disgusted by her. You stood dazed, looking up at the starry sky. You closed your eyes, remembering the moment when the branch of Alicon arrived and resided in your body. Something had become distorted in your mind, the memories of Alicon? No, it was something that he never wanted to forget. Ruby sniffled, asking skeptically, a memory. You took a gentle step toward Ruby. You had been swept away by the past, and there was something you wanted to tell her. Anata reached out and wiped it away. A tear still lingered on her lashes. She had always been by his side. He apologized and thanked her, realizing he had forgotten that he still had family, that he was never truly alone. All this time, she couldn't hold it in and burst into tears, hugging Anata tightly. She shouted that she was his family, Anata's family. The more powerful an avatar's branch becomes, the more vivid its emotions and feelings grow. Alicon's branches were filled with regret, pain, and precious memories of him and the queen, while his own branch held nothing but endless greed. Always burning with the desire for revenge, he had become like an animal, fueling his fighting spirit to fill the bleeding void in his heart. Ruby looked anxiously at Anata's melancholic face. Are you sad? She caressed his face, comforting him with the most heartfelt words. Don't be sad because I am your family. I don't want you to be unhappy at all. Anata stood up and took Ruby's small hand. Wait for me a moment. The moment I have avenged my sister, the moment that battle ends, let's go visit her together. The scene shifts to the encampment. Lagerta is utterly shocked to see Whitefoot appearing there. She doesn't recall anything happening. There certainly hasn't been any official notice to deploy reserves. Whitefoot cuts her off. Forgive my rudeness, my lady, but a serious situation has arisen. They are fiercely competing for the top position. Where is Anata right now? Nadia, standing in the distance, sees Whitefoot's arrival. She is also deeply surprised. Lagerta's close warrior can no longer hold back and angrily shouts, What on earth is this disrespectful attitude of yours? The warrior's funeral hasn't even ended yet. But Whitefoot insists, saying this matter directly concerns the fortress of Levitain. Her power has its limits. She can only teleport to the destination's safest location. Blackfoot stands beside her, taking out a rabbit-faced pocket watch, eyeing the safety of areas within the spatial shift. It is very likely being constantly monitored. My little sister is very shy, so even her powers reflect her personality. Lagerta shouts in a rage. Then why on earth would you think the fortress isn't safe? Whitefoot responds to Lagerta's fury. The only criterion my power uses to evaluate safety is simple. To someone completely incapable of combat, what impact could a threat to their life have? There is a very high probability that the secret fortress of Levitain is currently being invaded by the enemy. Long ago, when the world was still a blank page, a massive wave shook this universe. Space and time expanded infinitely, opening the horizons of the world. Beings were born, and among them stood the leaders of prayers and life, the god of angels, leader of curses and death, the god of deceit, leader of miracles and laws, the god of magic, leader of cycles and melodies, the god of witchcraft, leader of war and chaos, the god of warriors, and leader of creation and destruction, the god of machines. They were the 6 absolute gods. Eventually, the gods began to build the blue planet we live on. They created countless beings, including humanity. The gods believed a prophecy. Bane was necessary to help life coexist. On their behalf, the gods' secret treasure containing their power was bestowed upon 5 souls of living beings, and those were the first avatars. A young child asks, I have a question, Mother. I believe there are 6 first avatars. The grandmother praises the boy's quick wit. Unlike the other gods who gave their sacred treasures to the strong souls of living beings, the machine god created his own representative, a perfect being modeled after humanity. The avatar of machines. The avatars set off one by one to find their own lands. They coexisted with humanity as partners for a long time. However, peace did not last long. That was because the avatar of wings, The Avatar of Wings had stolen the god's sacred treasure and destroyed the first avatars. In the end, he brutally slaughtered those who opposed him, and because of that, Levitathan rose up determined to defeat the Avatar of the Wicked Wings. They prepared for the battle. Under the command of the queen, a little girl asks her anxiously, "What if something happens while the queen is leading the conquest?" Bernhardt walks up from behind and tells her not to worry, for the avatars and warriors under the queen are all elites, and Queen Lagerta herself is a warrior. He is certain she will return safely from her conquest. Bert smiles and apologizes to the grandmother. He doesn't know if he is interrupting the children's lesson. The grandmother respectfully bows to him. Not at all. On the contrary, she thanks him for spending his precious time coming here. The witty boy points at Raclet. So will she also become incredibly strong, like Bert. Another girl is also extremely curious. How could a child like Raclet become an avatar? The grandmother explains that avatars also marry and leave descendants for future generations. The power of an avatar is often passed down to the descendants of that person. Raclet must have also received power from an avatar. The boy says playfully, "If you are Bernhardt's child, you could also become an avatar." In that torrential rain on that dark night, the alarm bells announcing an impending invasion shocked the entire city of Levitain. Bernhardt stood up in a panic. An enemy invasion. Ur was present before the fortress gate. Is this the entrance to the fortress? It is truly worth seizing. MNS I, the 10th seat of Sephiros. The avatar of terrifying power was also incredibly excited. The soldiers were horrified by the sight before them. Bernhardt turned pale. Why, at the very moment the queen is away, Ur swung his hammer, unleashing a blizzard to clear a path for Mansi. Excited, he yelled, "It's time!" Mansi, in his mammoth form, took momentum and charged toward the castle gate. The soldiers panicked. Prince Bernhardt, if this keeps up... Bernhardt quickly ordered the entire army to prepare for battle. Just as Mansi reached the gate, a massive figure every bit his equal blasted him back out. Taken, the second commander of the Leviathan army and the embodiment of obstruction, stood tall before the gate like a guardian, blocking all danger from entering. Seeing Taken step up, Ure was thrilled. He mocked Mansi. "Mansi, you're supposed to be breaking down gates, yet you get knocked back by a single blow. How pathetic and despicable." Ur taunted him, asking if he wanted to trade places so he could lead the charge instead. Furious, Mansi stomped his feet hard against the icy ground. He spat that those words were unfair and vowed to fight until his dying breath. Stopping him with the power of just a minor incarnation was impossible. It must be Taken's special ability. He swore to turn Taken into mincemeat with his power. Increasing his body's weight, he prepared to crush Taken. Standing on the ramparts, Bernhardt looked down at the fierce battle below, shaking his head at Mansi's arrogance. Mansi still hadn't learned how to be humble. As he threw his heavy body to flatten Taken, he was blocked yet again. Taken possessed no special power. He simply looked at Mansi with the eyes of a reaper. Looking at the arrogant Mansi, Taken coldly struck him straight on the head with his staff. Everything that Taken was merely a pure fighting spirit. He was favored by the god of warriors, and was the commander of the strongest army in Leviathan. Bernhardt jumped down from the ramparts. He said Takan had arrived just in time. Takan asked if he was planning to face them directly. The answer didn't need much guessing. Of course he was. The weapon Ur held earlier was a sacred relic of the guild that protected the northern icy bloodline. That incarnation was cold to the extreme, and it was his duty to fight him. Responding to his words was Ure's wicked grin. The frozen land belonged to the northern cold stone bloodline because of its harsh and brutal environment. There had never been a war or invasion for a long time. This land was considered a paradise where humans and incarnations lived together. One day a stranger arrived in this paradise. A warrior who had earned his reputation winning countless prestigious military awards from battlefields across the continent. Bernhardt, the embodiment of courage, those who had never experienced war were terrified of him. But there was still one person who pitied him and welcomed him to Paradise Tosca, the embodiment of white snow. Bernhardt, who knew nothing but combat, was saved by her kindness. They developed feelings for each other as if it were destiny, and they married with everyone's blessings. Not long after their first child was born, yet they were unaware that they wouldn't be able to live happily forever. How could they face their monstrous child? They worried about the child's future, when it would have to grow up amidst the disgust and boycotts of those around them. At first, they were filled with regret and sorrow until a savior appeared, Julio. the embodiment of the great wings. Bernhardt was full of self-reproach. Back then he had been too foolish. He was deceived by the promise of saving his child, never thinking of the consequences that his choice would bring. Ure laughed with amusement. He couldn't remember how many years had passed. It's been a long time, hasn't it, Bernhardt? But speaking from a biological perspective, you're the one who gave birth to me, so I should still call you Dad, right? Ure held a bear fur hat in his hand. He held it up before his face with pure delight. If that's the case from now on, I should call this pelt Mom, right? Bernhardt didn't hesitate or say much more. He grabbed his blade and attacked Ure directly, angrily, warning him not to dare insult his wife. Ure remained stone-faced, parrying every blow he rained down. Truly disappointing. Is this why you're called the embodiment of strength? Bernhardt's blade froze upon touching Ure's stone hammer. He launched a barrage of attacks, knocking Bernhardt back. Ure looked at him with amusement. You can't even block. Shouldn't you be proud? I was once just a monster, but I've been able to become this strong, thanks to your power and Tosca's. Bernhardt spoke softly to the furious Taken beside him. Don't worry, I won't fall until the battle is over. Or laughed loudly, mocking him. You never know, do you? Fighting is fun, sure, but the mission always comes first. Inside the castle, citizens were being slaughtered by the 9th seat of Sephiroth Manita, the embodiment of brilliant light. The 8th seat of Sephiroth Akara, the embodiment of silence, had also arrived. Deep within the innermost shelter of the Leviathan fortress, soldiers were urgently evacuating the people. The grandmother was also assisting the soldiers. Everyone, please be careful and follow me. While no one was paying attention, Raikles froze in place, staring blankly at the ceiling of the bunker. The young girl had noticed something unusual, and right at that moment, Mania, Akara, and Kasola leaped down to intercept the crowd. The scene shifted back to Bernhardt, observing Ure's triumphant smile. He had also realized that something was wrong here. So from the very beginning, the invasion was all just a distraction. Ure was extremely excited. You guessed right. He smashed his ice hammer into the ground, unleashing a blizzard that erected a crystal palace, trapping both of them inside with him. With a grim expression, Taken used all his strength to swing his staff, but it only caused the ice walls to wobble slightly, leaving them otherwise unharmed. Ure looked at his expression with interest. This isn't very good, is it? The Crystal Palace is the strongest shield formation in existence. A blizzard is their only way out of here. They have no choice but to take him down. This is sacred ground, a place that honors the god Gahan, and he isn't going to let anyone leave alive. Bernhardt stares in shock at Ure's white bear form. He is absolutely stunned. Tosca, this is the karma they have to pay for what they've done. Ure charges wildly at the two of them. Taken stands his ground, blocking his attack without hesitation. But the blow from just a moment ago, it only took one strike to send him flying. MNS's attempt was just as easily blocked by Ure. He still has the breath to taunt him. You look so worried, don't you? You're already planning to take me down as fast as you can, right? But it's not going to be that easy. He carries the power of 2 incarnations plus his own branch of strength. Can you even handle that? If things keep going like this, you won't be able to protect anyone. Taken shows zero reaction to Ure's provocation. If that's how it is, then give it everything you've got. Ure flinches, sensing a murderous intent, and scrambles backward. What did he just get scared? While Ure is still reeling and losing his nerve, Bernhardt, in his brown bear combat form, lunges forward and delivers a massive slap that snaps him back to reality. Ure stares in awe at Bernhardt's fighting style. These are the number 1 and number 2 commanders of the Leviathan army? Scene shifts back to the deepest shelter of the fortress. Mania and Akara are frantically tearing at the door in front of them. Kasola says with disgust, Mania, cut it out. You're both so noisy, you've been at it for ages, and the door hasn't even budged. Don't tell me you can't break down one measly door. You two are truly useless. Kasola looks over her shoulder, pointing at the citizens running from afar. Instead of breaking the door, why don't you deal with those intruders? If they manage to get as close to her as they are from over there, don't you think it'll be a bit annoying? Mania and Akara are frozen by the look on Kasola's face. They understand. With twisted, savage laughter, they turn around to hunt the citizens. Kasola saunters forward as if this were her own home. These people living in this fortress are the very last ones left. Can you hear them? The fate of warriors, those dying in agony, coming to save you. Kasola laughs with utter contempt, placing her hand on the wall before her. This wall, Amidst the desperate screams of the people, the door shielding them is easily melted away by her slime. Kisola wears a pitying smile for the crowd. How long do you really think that could protect you? If she wanted to, she could easily wipe every single one of them out right now. They must know that by now, right? Uncontrolled excitement spreads in her eyes. Oh, you poor, pitiful humans. I'll give you one last chance. Kisola points toward the children being shielded by the godmother. The little ones over there. Offer their hearts to me. She hungrily licks her finger. Do that and the rest of you will be spared. The children cling to the godmother's skirt in terror. She shouts angrily, everyone stay focused. Are you seriously considering hurting the children? Don't let that monster lead us astray. You will not be allowed to lay a single finger on them. Kisola is enraged by the godmother's words. She loses her patience, grinding her teeth in annoyance. How boring. You've ruined my fun. So she'll just have to kill everyone. The godmother rushes to pull the children into her arms to protect them. In the nick of time, Rackle steps in to counter Kisola's slime, defending everyone. Kisola is absolutely delighted. It seems I've found a new toy. How disappointing all that strength, that resolve coming from such fragile little leaves. I have someone like that too. Little one being more precious than anything else in this world. The most noble and honorable creation of all, even in this very moment. Her mind is completely flooded with images of him, and she won't let anyone but herself have his heart. Kisola goes mad. That's right, do you know what this feeling is called? It's called love. Rackle is frozen in fear by the sight of her terrifying snake form. The little girl falls to the ground in horror, crying out of terror. Kisola watches her cry with amusement. So what are you going to do now? She sighs with regret. I was wondering if you'd have enough talent to play with me for a while. The godmother screams Rackle's name in a panic and lunges toward the girl to shield her. She looks tenderly at the frightened Rackle. Are you hurt, my dear? But her voice is cut short instantly. Kisola uses her long, hideous tongue to pierce through the woman's back. She wraps around her as light as a feather, ending her life. Just like a hollow play. Don't go ruining my entertainment like that. She gripped the woman's remains tightly in her hand, using her corrosive slime to melt them away. What a worthless old hag, she sneered until her attention was drawn to Ragless, who was holding a small dagger. The girl muttered, I hate you, Kisola, as if she were paralyzed and frozen in place. Could it be that she had just transformed into an evil spirit? Ragless was completely consumed by hatred. I hate you, melt away! A tiny dagger managed to sever one of Kisola's legs. She shrieked uncontrollably in a frenzy. Mania heard the scream and was utterly shocked. Miss Kisola. Ragless seemed to have lost all control, swinging her blade repeatedly. Melt away! Kisola struggled to dodge the girl's strikes, hissing madly. You damn brat! She wasn't an easy target. She spat out slime to parry the blow. Melt, but her slime. You're no longer a threat to me. Ragless blocked Kisola's slime with her own. For the first time, Kisola felt threatened. The woman screamed in hatred, I will never forgive you even if you crush them while they're alive and drink them. That's not pleasant at all. Mania and Akara rushed it over. Kisola, are you okay? Kisola lost control, cursing, You're all just a bunch of useless animals. It's so annoying to play the role of an advisor so precisely like this. Not letting her ramble any further, something that looked like a massive, humongous tree trunk lunged forward, sending Kisola flying 10 meters away. With that, this plastic surgery face of... Kisola's must be blown to pieces by now. Seeing Kisola thrown away like a dirty, crushed centipede, Mania recoiled in shock. What the hell was that? Before they could even think, Lagerta and Owl lunged forward, swinging their swords to attack both of them. Lagerta glared at them with hatred. You disgusting scum, the queen is here to feast on you. Inside, Nadia hugged Ragless tightly, who was completely out of her mind. You were scared, weren't you? You're shivering. You must have been so terrified. Don't be afraid anymore. I won't let anyone hurt you again. So please come back to being yourself, so you can return to the arms of those you love. From the corner of Ragless's eyes, a single tear slowly fell. The dark patchy marks on the girl's body gradually vanished. Her eyes returned to a clear golden hue. She couldn't hold it in any longer and burst into painful tears. The other children hurried over to hug her. Nadia stepped out of the tree trunk barrier she had just created and once again formed a door to protect everyone inside. Kisola went crazy, screaming, I heard the enemy abandoned this basement. Along with all the elites. Where did all these people come from? But that doesn't matter anymore, because here I will strip them all bare and rip out their organs. Nadia spoke softly. I suppose you are the one who caused this brutal tragedy. Kisola laughed mockingly. So what are you going to do about it? Nadia smiled gently. Thank you for being such a wicked villain. Because of you, I don't need to hesitate anymore. Kisola froze in astonishment. What is this? Is this déjà vu? It was just like when she was a little girl a long time ago, the kind of malice that only evil spirits could radiate. Was it hatred? She arrogantly looked down at Nadia. Don't look at me like that, you bitch. Even if the ice melts, who gave you the right to look at me like that? But responding to her madness was Nadia's composure. Although she had lost the memories of her past, she couldn't think of anyone she had ever killed with these hands. Kisola was truly terrified this time. It wasn't déjà vu, this feeling was familiar. Only those at the top of the food chain possessed the aura of the peak. Nadia stepped toward her. So tell me your name so I can remember you as the only person I've ever killed. Cutting to the scene with Bernhardt. This is impossible. Taken led the way, responsible for both offense and defense, while Bernhardt always aimed for practical strikes, leaving no room for openings. They seemed invincible, but nothing could be predicted. Fighting two people at once wasn't a good strategy. Ur couldn't afford to be careless. He launched an attack, throwing ice shards to distract Takan. Just as he lunged to strike, Bernhardt also charged toward him. Ur blocked him with his bare hands. Basic combat rules, he scoffed. He would take them down one by one, starting with the weakest, but Bernhardt reminded him that the basic rule of combat is never to give up. Then I'll teach you a lesson. Xavier was indifferent, but didn't let him get cocky for long. Taken used his frostbitten arm to grab his neck. Ur roared, warning the two if they thought this meaningless resistance could work on him, they were wrong. No one could defeat him, but he couldn't stay arrogant for long because Ananta's flames had incinerated his crystal castle. Before Bernhardt could even process what was happening, Ananta scoffed. You two are having this much trouble. With just a single enemy, how pathetic. Rupa waved to greet them. Before they could ask much, Ure cut the conversation short. Leviathan's reinforcements. He encased himself in frigid ice. You dare to chat while I'm still here. How truly pathetic. Bernhardt looked at Uri's form and spoke, stopping Ananta in her tracks. He is the 5th seat of Sephiros. He's not an easy opponent. But Rupa told him to just stay calm. Ananta isn't as weak as you think. Uri, don't tell me you're actually planning to take me on all by yourself, Ananta sneered. How much longer are you going to keep running your mouth? Enraged by his words, Uri immediately charged in, but his punches didn't even leave a scratch on Ananta. Ruba just smirked at him. You even managed to beat the 2nd seed of Sephiros? Ur stammered in shock. That's an incredible amount of power. Could it be that you are Ananta, the incarnation of vengeance? Ananta delivered an effortless punch, sending Ure flying right out of his ice armor. Ure suddenly remembered Beheron's warning: if there was an emergency, call him immediately. He used his power to open a portal. Bernhardt watched the gate open. Could that be Ananta? He continued. It is him, the incarnation of the wings, but over here, an unforeseen turn of events had unfolded. Ao had betrayed them completely, flipping the game. Kisola was still talking tough, even though she was breaking out in a cold sweat from Nadia's overwhelming pressure. Don't look at me with those eyes. She was about to show her just how massive the gap in their power really was. Kisola released a cloud of poisonous gas, catching Lagertha off guard. She hurriedly called Ao to her side and raised a shield. This is my indivisible form, she hissed. Suffer and die in my wave of toxins. But Nadia just remained calm, cutting right to the heart of Kisola's insecurity. You are struggling, lost in fear and humiliation. Every one of Kisola's attacks was easily blocked by Nadia. Frustrated, she shrieked, Damn it! Her corrosive poison wasn't working on Nadia at all. Fine, then I'll just tear you to shreds with my own hands. But before she could even lay a finger on Nadia, she was dragged into a pitch-black void, dark as ink. Kisola stared, bewildered. What? What is this? She seemed exhausted, falling right out of her own giant centipede form, screaming, No, no, no! It was all so ridiculous. Nadia had intended to completely overwhelm her in this direct confrontation. Lagertha broke into a cold sweat as she watched Nadia. So that is your true core energy. Ao spoke up, looks like you've won. And then the moment no one expected. Ao drove his sword straight through Nadia's heart. Just as Lagertha was distracted, Mania and Akara seized control of her. Kisela burst into loud, gleeful laughter. Lagertha, heartbroken and furious, shouted, "Why? Why did you betray them, Ao?" But he just responded coldly, "I'm sorry. One day the truth will come to light." Lagertha was left trembling at the sight before her. This couldn't be happening. Even now she could still feel the rage directed at the incarnation of the wings within him. Ao replied calmly, "That's exactly why it was so easy to trick you. Just to create a distraction. Her eyes, which could see through the essence of human nature that anger toward the incarnation of the wings inside him couldn't have been a lie." Mania smugly stepped on Lagertha's head, pinning her to the ground. "Shut your mouth, little queen." Ao told them that if they wanted to easily finish off the rest of the army commanders, it was best not to harm the queen yet. He turned his head and urged Kisela to clean up this mess. "Hurry up." Kisela had realized he was the spy Juyo had mentioned, but so what? How dare he give orders to her? Ao shot her a disgusted look. "Who do you think all of this is for, huh? If you hadn't almost gotten yourself killed, I wouldn't have had to intervene. Now the incarnation of conquest has already lost. Quick, the power will—" But before he could finish, Nadia, who had been stabbed seconds ago, slowly stood up. Ao stared at her in shock as if she hadn't taken any damage at all. "Wake up! How is this possible? You were clearly run through the heart." But Nadia was no longer the Nadia they knew. Ao quickly grabbed Kisela, hoisting her onto his shoulder, and took flight, leaving Mania and Akara in a panic. What on earth is this? Is Nadia's curse consuming those two? Let the light guide your mind, Nadia. A man greeted her gently. "It's so nice to meet you, big sister. I think now I can finally get closer to the person inside of yours. What is needed to open the horizon of the world is the sublimation of the branches within. The desires of the possessor, these two things are the world of imagination, vivid seeking to change the world whenever it pleases. Look at it, the world you dream of is so bright and beautiful a place without a single stain. Would you like to join me in leading the change for this world? The incarnation of nature. Or was it Senunos, the incarnation of magic?" Nadia woke up feeling groggy and found herself lying on a sandy beach, the ocean before her glowing a deep red. Where am I? "I was just fighting a moment ago." And my heart, it was stabbed through. Nadia touched the gaping wound on her body, wondering how she was still alive, when a voice from behind her whispered, "Because from the very beginning you were neither alive nor dead. Nice to meet you, Nadia." A girl who looked 80 to 90% like her but with piercing red eyes stepped toward her. "Who are you? It seems you really don't know anything yet, do you? No wonder you didn't hesitate at all when you summoned me." She smiled and dropped a shocking revelation right there and then. "Your heart has stopped beating, being controlled by a raven corpse like a puppet. I suppose that heartbeat of yours is just an artificial one created by the power of the branch. I have been waiting for you for such a long time, because I wanted to stand face to face with you like this. At some point, but I couldn't because as long as you hold the reins, I will only ever be your shadow." Nadia shouted loudly, "Cut the nonsense, you who look exactly like me. Who on earth are you? My name is Senunot, the very first evil god of this world." She smiled, introducing herself with a wicked, devious grin. With that evil smile, her eyes glowed deep red before turning pitch black as she formally introduced herself to Nadia. The gloomy sky from moments ago suddenly shifted into brilliant, blinding sunlight. In the primordial age during the era of myths, there existed a divine beast, the embodiment of magic that was granted a human form in the vast forest to the west. A place overflowing with the blessings of Mother Nature where the local inhabitants dwelled. They revered that day as a prophecy to be worshipped. At the same time, an embodiment appeared whose name meant one who possessed both horns and wealth, Senunot. A mortal creature transient by nature, always in search of beauty. Through generations and their own harmony, Senunot joined them in praying for eternal peace, never knowing that it was merely a pipe dream, a culture of races. In a time of violence, all aspects of humanity became nothing but raw meat for the desires of others, turning the world into a place where slaughter became the natural order of things. The 6 embodiments at that time. On one hand, they were terrifying punishers. On the other, they were stern arbitrators standing to protect humanity. And then one day, an unannounced spark of invasion, of massive scale, swallowed the entire forest. The invaders in golden armor were a powerful army gathered from heroes led by the warrior embodiment Lyoga. The forest tribes stood up to fight against dozens of invading enemies and to protect those they loved. Senunot also threw themselves into the battlefield. The battle ended with countless lives fallen and the forest completely burned to the ground. Senunot stood tall, bracing against spears and arrows piercing straight through their body. Lauga stepped close to Senunot. A magnificent ending for one chosen by the supreme god. I will carve your death deep into this heart of mine. Senunot turned, looking stunned. Laoga, a warrior known as the respectable Lion King. How could you be the mastermind behind such a brutal massacre? I do not expect you to forgive me. For the sake of the greater cause, I am prepared to bear the infamy of being a cruel murderer. What did you say? There was a prophecy from Luna, the embodiment of sorcery, who possessed the ability to foresee the future.